Chapter 1860. Boom, boom, boom. The divine energy in Lu Li's body was compressed into grenades. They pierced in a mass of primordial chaos chi and exploded. 5 grenades exploded at the same time. However, the mass of primordial chaos chi did not disperse. It was only separated into 2 masses, and the 2 masses of primordial chaos chi came together again. Not enough. Lu Li frowned. The book said there were 5 grenades. It seemed that there were not enough. The amount of primordial energy he had absorbed was indeed a little too much, so he needed more divine bombs. He made more grenades, 10 at a time, and they pierced into the mass of primordial chaos chi. This time it worked. The mass of primordial chaos chi was split into 5 parts and dispersed. PFF. Lu Li trembled and spat out some blood. The mass of primordial chaos chi did explode. But at the same time, the shockwave from the grenades could hurt his internal organs. The mass of primordial chaos chi stopped at his chest and abdomen. His internal organs were nearby. The weakest part of a person's body was the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. This was also a very important part of a person. Once it was injured, it would be very uncomfortable. Lu Li's physical body was strong. The injury was not serious. He didn't worry about it. He kept his psychic power on the mass of primordial chaos chi. He wanted to see how much primordial chaos chi would be absorbed by his body. How? After a while, Lu Li sighed. 5 masses of primordial chaos chi were blasted apart. Not much was absorbed. He just checked and found that only a dozen strands of primordial chaos chi were absorbed. Compared to the first method, this method was definitely an improvement. It was a dozen times faster. The problem was that this method would hurt him. He would have to endure the pain and heal himself. What was the point of increasing the efficiency by more than 10 times? Even if he kept on blasting, it would take him decades to absorb all the primordial chaos chi. The primordial chaos chi is indeed one of the most miraculous in the universe. I can tell from the absorption that it is extraordinary. Lu Li sighed. He was not in a hurry to experiment. Instead, he began to think. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting firewood. The efficiency of the 3 methods was too low. It was so slow that he could not stand it. He planned to spend some time to see if he could find another way to dissolve the primordial chaos chi faster. Lu Li lived comfortably on the top of the Heaven Cloud Peak, but the Heaven Cloud Mountain was not peaceful recently. The news that Fairy Tian Yun asked Lu Li to stay on the peak of the mountain spread out, causing an uproar in the entire Cloud Mountain. At first, many people were just envious and jealous of Lu Li. This time, some people were completely envious. If Fairy Tian Yun didn't set the rules for entering the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, no one would dare to say anything. After all, Tianyun Mountain belonged to Fairy Tianyun. Whatever she said was true. However, Fairy Tianyun had set the rules and divided the people of Mount Tianyun into 5 classes. Many people had lived on Mount Skycloud for hundreds of thousands of years. In order to obtain a higher status, better treatment, and to live on the peak of the mountain, they cultivated hard and risked their lives to enter the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Time and time again, 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 time and time again. In other words, everyone had been following the rules of the game for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, a young man had suddenly appeared, and he didn't need to follow the rules of the game and could directly go to the finish line. What do you expect everyone to think? How could they not be bitterly disappointed? How could they accept it? How could they feel at ease? If they were angry, they had to vent it out. It was not just 1 or 2 people who were angry. Many old guys were unhappy. There were not just hundreds of people living on Mount Skycloud, but tens of thousands. In fact, some of the commanders were feeling extremely unbalanced. The thing was, even if they were unhappy, who dared to question Fairy Tianyun? They couldn't question her or ask for an audience with her. What should they do then? Someone came up with a good idea, and this person spread the idea. Soon, a group of people responded to it. When night fell, a group of people took action first, followed by many others. The way they chose was simple, but it seemed to be stupid. They chose to kneel. At first, hundreds of people walked to Mount Skycloud and got down on one knee. They didn't say anything and just knelt in silence. Gradually, after midnight, the number grew to 1 or 2,000. By daybreak, there were 6 or 7,000 people kneeling at the foot of Mount Skycloud. The 6 or 7,000 people were all on their knees. None of them said anything. They didn't say anything either. They just knelt in silence. Silent protest. These thousands of people were using this silent protest to express their dissatisfaction, grievances, and unfairness. Thousands of people were kneeling. Such a big commotion would definitely be heard by Fairy Tianyun immediately. With Fairy Tianyun's intelligence, she could tell why everyone was behaving this way. By doing this, they could express their inner demands perfectly and not provoke Fairy Tianyun's dignity. If Fairy Tianyun didn't want the 6,000 people to be bitterly disappointed and the people on Mount Skycloud didn't want to turn against her, then she had to drive Luli off the peak of heavenly clouds or even out of Mount Skycloud. Either there were no rules of the game, or everyone had to abide by the rules. Or Fairy Tianyun would announce to the public why she was so nice to Luli. Even if Fairy Tianyun said that she accepted Luli as her gigolo, everyone would feel better. It was daybreak, but Fairy Tianyun didn't give any response. Everyone continued to kneel. Soon, it was dark again, and then it was daybreak again. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days. The 6 or 7,000 people had been kneeling here for 5 days, but the peak of heavenly clouds was still quiet. Fairy Tianyun didn't give any response. There were commanders and patriarchs who reported this to her. In fact, 2 commanders and 4 patriarchs had asked to see Fairy Tianyun in the past few days. However, there was no response. The 6 or 7,000 people were embarrassed. After kneeling for so many days, they didn't know whether to move forward or retreat. They couldn't keep kneeling here, could they? But what if Fairy Tianyun didn't give any response? Were they going to kneel here for a month, a year, or 10 years? If they didn't kneel, were they going back with their tails between their legs? 6 days, 8 days, 10 days. Still, there was no response. The thousands of people couldn't hold it anymore. Fairy Tianyun's disregard made them feel a burning pain on their faces. They all felt humiliated. Some of them already had the idea of leaving Mount Skycloud. If you don't want me here, there will be another place. Since you, Fairy Tianyun, don't think highly of us, then we will seek shelter from other forces. When all the subordinates were deserted, how would Fairy Tianyun regret? The 11th day, finally, someone couldn't bear it anymore. He suddenly stood up with a face full of grief and indignation. He raised his arms and shouted, "Brothers, stop kneeling. Even if we kneel to death here, Fairy Tianyun won't even look at us. Since Fairy Tianyun doesn't care about us, then we don't have the face to stay here. Everyone, let's go. We don't want to stay on Mount Skycloud. That's right. We don't want to stay here. Go, go. This place doesn't want me here." Many people stood up and shouted with grief and indignation. Finally, all 6 or 7,000 people stood up with agitated emotions. The commanders at the foot of Mount Skycloud were all panicking. Even the elders who were hiding in the dark were anxious. "All of you shut up," an indistinct voice echoed. Fairy Tianyun finally passed down a message. However, her words completely chilled everyone's heart. "If you want to leave, then leave. Don't shout here. It's so noisy. Aren't you guys mistaken about something? Do you all think that without you all, my Mount Skycloud will be finished? Even if all of you leave, who would dare to attack Mount Skycloud? P.S. I'm still stuck. There are 2 more chapters at night. I will finish them even if I don't sleep." Chapter 1861. Fairy Tianyun's domineering words surprised everyone. However, after thinking about it carefully, they realized they were mistaken about one thing. Maybe the leaders of other forces were afraid that their subordinates would leave, but Fairy Tianyun didn't have this concern at all. Fairy Tianyun's status was very unique. She was the great demon king's favorite sister. Who dared to attack Mount Tianyun on heavenly demonic island? Since no one dared to invade Mount Tianyun, it didn't matter if there were experts or troops on the mountain. even if there was no one but Fairy Tianyun alone who dared to attack Mount Tianyun. In other words, the warriors on Mount Tianyun couldn't help Fairy Tianyun at all. Instead, all of them were under Fairy Tianyun's grace. Fairy Tianyun took them in because she was kind and benevolent. She was the supreme being, and she was the game maker. She could do whatever she wanted, but these people dared to threaten her? Weren't they just asking for trouble? Let's go. More than a dozen people flew out of the mountain angrily. They thought everyone would follow them if they left. However, when they flew up, they found only about 100 people followed them. The rest stayed on the ground. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were flickering. However, they didn't move. The 100 people were embarrassed. They came to their senses at this moment. Mount Tianyun was such a treasure land. If they left, they might not find a good place to stay. They might even die soon. After flying for about 100 miles, the 100 people all stopped. They looked back and found one person who didn't follow them. They regretted it, thinking about how they might offend Fairy Tianyun after leaving this place. If Fairy Tianyun were to say something, no faction would take them in. They would become wandering ghosts. They could either leave Heavenly Demonic Island or be killed outside. Let's go back. Some people murmured. 4 of them turned back, clenching their teeth. The rest of them were even more embarrassed. They stopped and looked at the 4 people. When the 4 people flew back, they knelt on the ground and shouted, "Fairy, we were foolish. Please forgive us. Get lost." Fairy Tianyun yelled angrily, "Since you chose to leave, be a man. All of you who made trouble, listen up. Leave Mount Tianyun in 1 hour. Otherwise, you'll be killed." Swoosh, 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 the 6,000 to 7,000 troublemakers were completely dumbfounded. A group of them immediately kowtowed and begged for mercy, begging Fairy Bai Yun to forgive their mistakes, but Fairy Tianyun did not send another word. Elder Chun flew down from the peak of the mountain with a few elders and a group of commanders. Elder Chun coldly shouted, "Fairy has ordered us to leave within an hour. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless." Whoosh, 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 groups of soldiers swarmed over and surrounded this group of people. Everyone was being watched, and it was impossible to sneak away. These 6,000 to 7,000 people looked at each other, completely at a loss as to what to do. All along, Fairy Tianyun had been a lofty and gentle goddess in everyone's hearts. They had never seen her so domineering and heartless before. Today, everyone suddenly realized that although the fairy had a good temper, she was still an overlord. Not only was she the sister of the great demon king, but she was also a powerful expert. As an expert, how could he not have a temper? Time passed on bit by bit. Hundreds of people had their families at Mount Tianyun. Without their families, they did not know what to do. All they could do was to kowtow and beg for Fairy Tianyun's forgiveness. Fairy Tianyun did not send any more messages. Under the murderous stares of Patriarch Chun and the others, the 6,000 to 7,000 people had no choice but to leave Mount Tianyun in tears. Of the hundreds of people who had families, half of them left with their families, and the other half asked their families to stay at Mount Tianyun. They would come back to pick them up after they settled down. The farce ended with the cold-blooded suppression of Fairy Tianyun. After that, nobody talked about Luli anymore, but many people bore a grudge against Luli. Fairy Tianyun and the others dared not to bear a grudge, so they could only vent their anger on Luli. When powerful warriors gathered, they all said that they would kill Luli if they had the chance to vent their anger. Luli knew nothing about the dispute at the foot of Mount Tianyun. Recently, he had been in closed-door cultivation, trying to find a way to consume the primordial chi. After many days of closed-door cultivation, he came up with an idea, but it required the help of thunderbolts. There was a thunder-gathering formation in his body. When thunderbolts struck him, he could use the thunder-gathering formation to absorb the thunderbolts. He wanted to guide the thunderbolts into the primordial chi when the thunderbolts struck him. Thunderbolts had the property of separation. By then, he could take away part of the primordial chi and use thunderbolts to guide the primordial chi into his 720 acupoints. The theory was right, and it was feasible. Luli tried to guide thunderbolts out from his acupoints. He guided thunderbolts into the primordial chi and had a try. The effect was much better. However, since he had to guide thunderbolts out, the thunderbolts were not as powerful as before. Naturally, the efficiency was lower. Today, Luli came out from closed-door cultivation and asked to see Fairy Tianyun. After Chief Commander Lu's report, Luli went to the side chamber again. Luli went straight to the point and asked Fairy Tianyun where thunderbolts could be found. The more powerful, the better. He needed thunderbolts to consume the primordial chi in his body. Thunderbolts. Fairy Tianyun thought about it. After a while, she said, "There's a place called Jile Mountain nearby. There are thunderbolts all year round, and they're very powerful. But it is not the territory of Mount Tianyun, but the territory of Palace of Black Mountain. If you want to go there to cultivate, I will have to ask Patriarch Shin. But I cannot guarantee your safety. I cannot send powerful warriors there to protect you all the time." Luli frowned. Fairy Tianyun was telling the truth. That place was not the territory of Mount Tianyun. Fairy Tianyun could ask other forces to let Luli cultivate there. But she couldn't ask Patriarch Shun to protect him all the time. What if he had to cultivate at the Jile Mountain for dozens or hundreds of years? I don't have to wait that long. Luli thought about it. If the thunderbolts there were powerful, he might be able to consume all the primordial chi in a year or two. Also, absorbing thunderbolts all year round would increase his defensive abilities to an incredible level. He bowed and said, "Fairy, please ask Patriarch Shun to protect me for a year. After a year, I am sure that I can increase my defensive abilities by 100 times. By then, average warriors will not be able to kill me." "A year?" Fairy Tianyun said. "Okay, I will let Patriarch Shun stay with you for a year. Later, I will send you some scouts. Even if some powerful warriors are trying to kill you, you only need to hold on for an hour, and I will be there." "Okay, thank you, Fairy." Luli was overjoyed. As long as he could consume all the primordial chi, not even average 3 tribulation heaven gods could kill him. If there were tens of thousands of second tribulation heaven gods, he could hold on for an hour. Whoosh! A jade talisman whooshed over. Luli caught it with one hand. It was a beautiful jade talisman with the words Tianyun engraved on it. Fairy Tianyun said, "If you cannot hold on, crush the jade talisman. I will be there in an hour. Well, bring your soul slave with you. He can take care of him. As long as you can help him withstand the thunderbolts, cultivating at the peak of Jile Mountain is not a bad choice." Okay. Chapter 1862. The Jile Mountain was quite famous around here. Anyone who passed by here would have a deep impression of this place. It was said that there was a huge thunder-absorbing stone inside the mountain. Therefore, thunderbolts would strike down here all year round. The most important thing was the thunderbolts that struck down here were not regular ones. Some powerful warriors tested and found that the thunderbolts here were as strong as those of the Second Heaven Tribulation. Therefore, many warriors at the Omen Island would come here to have a try before they were ready to go through the Second Heaven Tribulation. If they could stand the thunderbolts here, they could survive the Second Heaven Tribulation. If they could not even stand the thunderbolts here, then there was no need to go through the Heaven Tribulation. Also, some powerful warriors who wanted to improve their bodies would come here to cultivate as well. However, they had to pay divine origin gold to cultivate here. This was the territory of the Palace of Black Mountain. Without divine origin gold, no one was allowed to go in. Patriarch Shun took Luli down the peak of Heaven Clouds, which attracted many people's attention. Luli had no idea that he was hated by many. He went to the Green Moon Peak with Patriarch Shun and left the mountain of Heaven Clouds directly after he found Uncle Lee. Luli leaving the mountain of Heaven Clouds caused a sensation. Many people wished they could kill Luli. How could he leave the mountain of Heaven Clouds at this time? The 6,000 or 7,000 warriors had all left the mountain of Heaven Clouds. It just so happened that some of them didn't know where to go, so they gathered outside the mountain of Heaven Clouds. Soon, the news spread out and attracted many people's attention. Compared to the powerful warriors in the mountain, the 7,000 or 8,000 warriors that were forced to leave hated Luli more. Now, Luli had left the mountain of Heaven Clouds. How could they miss such a good chance for revenge? It was a pity that Patriarch Chun was with Lu Li. Patriarch Chun was so powerful that nobody dared to mess around. Some had to follow them secretly to see where Patriarch Chun and Lu Li were going. Soon, Lu Li's whereabouts were confirmed. The Jile Mountain. Patriarch Chun, Lu Li, and Uncle Li went to the Jile Mountain and never came back down. Even though Patriarch Chun had been following Lu Li, many people still remembered this. Some even planned to join the Palace of Black Mountain so that they could find a chance to kill Lu Li. The Jile Mountain was huge. It was either a mountain range or a stone peak with a radius of more than 3 miles. Jile Mountain was made of a kind of reddish-brown stones. There were no plants or animals in the whole mountain. There were only stones. There were soldiers stationed at the foot of the mountain. There were only 100 of them, led by a commander. However, this place was only a few hundred miles away from the headquarters of the Black Mountain Palace. Once something happened here, the experts of the Black Mountain Palace would immediately come to help. The main reason was that apart from the lightning, there was nothing else in the mountain. There were no spirit stones or spirit medicines here. Most people would not be crazy enough to destroy the entire mountain. Furthermore, this mountain had been bombarded by thunderbolts all year round and had become extremely hard. Even if a human wanted to destroy it in one move, it would be very difficult. If they could not destroy the Jile Mountain and offended the palace lore of the Black Mountain Palace, it would not be worth it. Boom, boom, boom. Above the 9th heaven, black thunderbolts swooped down like raging dragons and blasted into the Jile Mountain. Dozens of thunderbolts struck down almost every second. As soon as he entered the mountain, he could feel the destructive aura contained within the lightning. Uncle Lee shrank his head. He was not afraid that the thunderbolts would strike him to death. It was just that if a warrior was not going to refine his body, why would he be struck by thunderbolts? It did not feel good to be struck by thunderbolts. It was suffering and torment. Lu Li, on the other hand, was very excited. He was like a man who had been starving for months, seeing delicious food. His eyes were glowing. The strength of the thunderbolts was beyond his expectation. They were much stronger than those in the heaven's tribulation in the divinity. Patriarch Chun went to negotiate with the commander who could not make the decision. He had to report it as soon as possible. Lu Li and Uncle Li waited quietly. In just an hour, a powerful warrior flew over with several warriors. As soon as they arrived, they bowed to Patriarch Chun and promised that Lu Li and Uncle Li could cultivate at the Jile Mountain all year round, and they would not charge any fees. Patriarch Chun exchanged some pleasantries and took Lu Li up the mountain. Uncle Li was troubled. He could cultivate at the Green Moon Peak, but Lu Li had to take him to the Jile Mountain. The thought of being struck by thunderbolts every day and not being able to cultivate was a headache for Uncle Li. Whoosh, at the top of the mountain, a thunderbolt struck down. Lu Li jumped up in excitement and flew toward the thunderbolt. Patriarch Chun and Uncle Li looked over with concern. Lu Li, please don't die. Boom! The black thunderbolt as thick as a human head struck Lu Li, but it didn't hurt him at all. As soon as the thunderbolt entered Lu Li's body, it was absorbed by the lightning gathering formation and transformed into energy that surged to his 720 acupoints. Well, Patriarch Chun nodded. Lu Li must have some skills to be chosen by Fairy Tianyan. Lu Li's eyes glowed. The thunderbolts here were powerful. One thunderbolt could be as powerful as hundreds of thunderbolts in the divinity. Elder Chun, Uncle Li, the two of you can stay here at the border. Lu Li took a look. The center of the mountain peak had the most thunderbolts. Occasionally, there would be thunderbolts. He didn't want Patriarch Chun and Uncle Li to suffer with him. Okay. Patriarch Chun nodded. Uncle Li was more than happy. He would stay with Patriarch Chun. He hoped that Patriarch Chun could take the thunderbolts and not let him suffer. Whoosh! Lu Li dashed toward the center of the mountain peak and attracted 5 thunderbolts. Patriarch Chun and Uncle Li were stunned. Instead of being hurt, Lu Li made it to the center easily. His face was flushed, and he was as excited as a kid who got his favorite toy. Good, good. There are fewer thunderbolts, but they are strong enough. At the center, he would be struck by more than a dozen thunderbolts every second. Lu Li could feel energy surging into his acupoints. His body was growing stronger. He was delighted. Try to consume the primordial energy. Luli sat on the ground with his legs crossed. He paid no more attention to the thunderbolts or what was going on outside. He guided the thunderbolts into the primordial energy. He separated part of the primordial energy and guided it into his acupoints. This is good. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Luli had made up his mind. The thunderbolts were powerful. When they entered the primordial energy, they could separate some of the primordial energy and send it into the lightning gathering formation. In the end, the primordial energy would be transmitted to the 720 acupoints. Luli could consume more than 100 strands of primordial energy in almost the time for one breath. It was 100 times faster than before. If nobody disturbed Luli, he could consume all the primordial energy in 2 or 3 years at most. So strong. The primordial energy is so strong. As the primordial energy entered his acupoints bit by bit, Luli could clearly feel that his body was improving. This speed of improvement was so fast that it shocked him. He felt like he was still a mortal who was swallowing divine pills one after another. His physical body was growing stronger at a terrifying speed. Cultivate, cultivate. Luli tried to calm himself down. The chance to soar was right in front of him. As long as he could improve his defensive abilities, he might not be able to fight against the Hall of Black Flames. At the very least, he would be able to protect himself when he encountered Yin Hong. Chapter 1863. The Black Mountain Palace had been very lively recently because there had been a lot of people joining the Black Mountain Palace recently. They were not ordinary low-level warriors. They were at least peak First Tribulation divine gods. The Black Mountain, where the Black Mountain Palace was located, was one of the 5 great spiritual mountains. It was originally called the Dragon Ruan Mountain, but 100,000 years ago, an expert occupied it and changed its name to the Black Mountain. The force that the Black Mountain was in was also called the Black Mountain Palace. The palace master of Black Mountain Palace, Black Mountain, was very strong. In the hearts of many martial artists, he was ranked in the top 5 of the heavenly Devil Island. However, Black Mountain had a bad temper and a strange personality. Therefore, there were not many people in the Black Mountain Palace. Some powerhouses could not stand Black Mountain's strange temper and were unwilling to work under him. Recently, there was a steady stream of people joining the Black Mountain Palace. This matter caused a commotion in the Black Mountain Palace, and even Black Mountain was alarmed. Later on, when they found out that this group of people were chased out by Fairy Tianyun, some of the Black Mountain Palace elders were in a dilemma. They were afraid that if they accepted this group of people, they would offend Fairy Yin. Later on, Black Mountain sent a message and accepted everyone. Since Fairy Yin did not want them, and these people volunteered to join him, why would he hesitate? He had always looked down on Fairy Yin, thinking that if she was not the great demon king, how could she occupy such a huge mountain? Over 5,000 people. Of the 6,000 or 7,000 people that were expelled from the Cloud Mountain, more than 5,000 went to the Black Mountain Palace for shelter. The main reason why they could settle down so quickly was Luli. This group of people had nowhere to vent their anger. Since they could not afford to offend Fairy Tianyun, they could only vent their anger on Luli. Luli worked for Fairy Tianyun. Without a powerful backer, they would be hunted down by Fairy Tianyun if they killed Luli. Therefore, they all chose the Palace of Black Mountain. Heishan's temper was foul and stubborn. On the heavenly Devil Island, apart from the great Devil King, he wouldn't give face to anyone. Therefore, when they joined the Black Mountain Palace and Luli was at the Jile Mountain, there was a good chance that they could kill him. Of course, the Black Mountain Palace was also a good place to go. Although the Black Mountain had a bad temper, at least the spirit chi in the Black Mountain was rich, so safety was guaranteed. Since thousands of people had entered, there would naturally be people who would start to establish good relations with the people from Black Mountain Palace. Luli's situation at the Jile Mountain was soon found out. Someone even went to the Jile Mountain to secretly observe Luli. However, Elder Chun had always been guarding the mountain peak, so no one dared to act recklessly. Everyone was aware of Elder Chen's strength. Even if they sent out 1,000 warriors, they might not be able to get around Patriarch Chen to kill Lu Li. If he failed to kill her and Fairy Tian Yun pursued the matter, then the gains would not make up for the losses. He could only wait. Among the thousands of people, a few of the strongest people made a decision. They would first work hard in the Black Mountain Palace and strive to get the position of commander. Then, he would keep an eye on the Jile Mountain and kill Lu Li when he had the chance. To many, Lu Li was just a toy boy, a one-tribulation heaven immortal, a nonentity. However, this ant had caused everyone to leave Heavenly Cloud Mountain helplessly, causing them to suffer great humiliation. How could they tolerate this? Of course, after joining the Palace of Black Mountain, there were some who wanted to live a comfortable life and cultivate quietly. Gradually, they stopped participating in the assassination of Lu Li. After all, so many people wanted to kill Lu Li. It didn't matter if there were more of them. Lu Li's life at the Jile Mountain was quite comfortable, even comfortable. It was the same for Uncle Li. At first, he was worried that he would be struck by lightning every day. His days would be very difficult, but now, he didn't think so. The Xianqi at the peak of the Jile Mountain was rich, much richer than at the Green Moon Peak. Sitting next to Patriarch Chun, Lu Li didn't have to worry about thunderbolts. Every time there was a thunderbolt, Patriarch Chun would wave his hand to block it. For the first half a month, Uncle Li would pay attention to what was going on outside. But after a month, Uncle Li had turned a blind eye. After all, Patriarch Chun was here. Not only could he block the thunderbolts for Lu Li, but he would also know if there was any disturbance. Lu Li didn't have to check around. Lu Li's process of consuming the primordial chaos chi was smooth. There were thunderbolts striking at him all the time. He was consuming the primordial chaos chi all the time. His physical body was improving. Thunderbolts could improve his physical body as well. After the third month, Lu Li felt his physical body was at least 10 times stronger. He felt his physical body was almost as strong as the average primordial spirit armor. More on, Lu Li didn't stay idle during these months. He had been studying the fundamental principle of Frost Sword Intent. The more he studied this fundamental principle, he learned on the boulder halfway up the Demon Mountain. The more he felt it was vast and powerful. In the Dreamland, the speed of his study was greatly enhanced. If it were just an average fundamental principle, he would have learned it by now. But he felt he had just learned the rudiments of this fundamental principle of Frost Sword Intent. It would take him at least 1 or 2 years to fully understand it. He didn't have to worry about consuming the primordial chaos chi anymore. Thunderbolts would enter his body and separate the primordial chaos chi. Then, the thunderbolts would be sent to the 720 acupoints in the Thunder Gathering Formation. Patriarch Chun would stay here for a year. Lu Li didn't have to worry about anything else. He just focused on cultivation. Towards the end, he didn't even pay attention to the consumption of the primordial chaos chi and the changes in his physical body. He immersed himself in studying the fundamental principle of Frost Sword Intent. Time flew by. It was easy to lose track of time when one was cultivating. For a warrior of Lu Li's level, 1 year was too short. He was still in closed-door cultivation. Not long after, Patriarch Chen sent a message. Lu Li, 1 year is up. I have to go back to the Cloud Mountain. Oh, Lu Li suddenly opened his eyes. He was stunned for a moment before he stood up. He casually waved his arms to stretch his numb body. Looking at Patriarch Chun with glowing eyes, he said, "Thank you, Patriarch Chun. Thank you." Patriarch Chun didn't leave right away. He looked at Lu Li with his cloudy eyes and said, "Stand here and don't move. Let me see how strong your defense is." Okay. Lu Li wriggled his arms. He could feel the explosive energy in his body. It was horrifying. With anticipation in his eyes, Lu Li made a stance and said, "Please, Patriarch Chun." Uncle Li had been alerted. He didn't know what Patriarch Chun had said. Hearing Lu Li's words, Uncle Li was filled with anticipation as well. Whoosh! Patriarch Chun didn't use any weapon. He flew over in a blur and slapped at Lu Li's chest with his skinny hand. Bang! A muffled sound came out. It was as if someone had struck a bronze bell. There was even an echo. The robe in front of Lu Li's chest was torn apart, but he only took 2 steps back. Patriarch Chen's cloudy eyes glowed. His wrinkled face was filled with astonishment. After a long time, he took back his hand and said, "Cultivate, Lu Li. I believe in you. You have the chance to form an immortal body." Lu Li only felt a bit of tightness in his chest after the slap. He didn't feel that Patriarch Chen used any powerful fundamental principle, so he didn't understand the strength of his attack. Lu Li thought about it and asked, "Patriarch, how strong is my physical defense?" "How strong?" Patriarch Chen frowned. Pointing to Uncle Li, he said, "Even if he attacks you with full force, you can stay alive." "What?" Chapter 1864. Patriarch Chen would not lie to Lu Li. Lu Li was delighted. He had only consumed 30% of the primordial qi. By the time he consumed all the primordial qi, he would be as strong as a 3-tribulation heaven god. "Okay, Lu Li, I will leave now." Patriarch Chen nodded. He thought about it and said, "Many people have been spying on you recently. Many of them are exiled from the Cloud Mountain. They may come after you. Be careful when you cultivate here. If something goes wrong, run away or ask for help from Fairy Tianyin." "Oh." Lu Li put his guard up. He cupped his fists and thanked Patriarch Chen, but didn't say anything. He could not ask Patriarch Chen to protect him here all the time. Patriarch Chen didn't have the obligation, and Lu Li didn't have the right. Patriarch Chen left. He didn't care about Lu Li's life or death. If it were not for the fact that Fairy Tianyin valued Lu Li, he wouldn't have warned Lu Li. Patriarch Chen had some complaints about Fairy Tianyin asking him to protect Lu Li. Patriarch Chen believed that to become a powerful warrior, one must grow up in the face of trials and hardships alone. A warrior that could only grow up under the protection of others would be useless, even if he could make progress in his realm. Uncle Li was still exclaiming about Lu Li's fast progress. He only realized something after Patriarch Chen left. Now that Patriarch Chen was gone, Lu Li would have to deal with the thunderbolts on his own. Safety first. Build some one-way teleportation formations. Lu Li thought about it and decided to be careful. Now that someone was after him, he could fail miserably at an easy task. Lu Li rushed over and began to build one-way teleportation formations at the border. If he were to build them at the center, they would be destroyed by thunderbolts soon. One-way teleportation formations were simple. It took Lu Li a day to build 3. He also built some simple illusions so that others wouldn't be able to see through them. The 3 teleportation formations were not far away, only hundreds of thousands of miles away. They could be useful in times of danger. Uncle Li asked after Lu Li was done, "Master, do you think someone is going to do something to you?" "Yes." Lu Li told Uncle Li about Patriarch Chen's message. Uncle Li said with a grave expression, "Then you do have to be careful. The 6 or 7,000 people that were expelled hate you. I didn't expect that they would have the guts to sneak into the Jilei Mountain. Master, go and cultivate. I'll stand guard outside." "What 6 or 7,000 people?" Lu Li didn't know about this yet. After Uncle Li told him about the farce, Lu Li put on a bitter expression, but he was not worried. Because these 6 to 7,000 people were all ordinary martial artists. The strongest among them was only a peak second tribulation heavenly god. As long as he was given some time, even a peak second tribulation heavenly god would not be able to kill him. "Uncle Li, stay alert. If anything happens, let me know immediately." Lu Li seized the time and went to the center of the Jilei Mountain to consume the primordial chaos qi. At the same time, he continued to study the fundamental principle of sword intent and frost. Lu Li had been studying the fundamental principle for a year, but he hadn't mastered it yet. He even felt he had a long way to go. Lu Li was not upset at all. Instead, he was happy. If it were easy to learn a fundamental principle, then it must be a low-level one. Naturally, it wouldn't be powerful. At this stage, Lu Li could already tell how powerful this fundamental principle was. He believed that when he mastered this fundamental principle, it would be more powerful than all the fundamental principles he had learned before. "Someone is here." The first few days were peaceful, but 6 days later, Uncle Li noticed that someone had come to investigate. They were not strong, but they were good at hiding. What are the warriors of the palace of Black Mountain doing? Uncle Lee murmured. Weren't there 100 warriors stationed down there? The Gile Mountain was not a large place. How could they not know there were scouts sneaking in? What Uncle Lee didn't know was that the 100 warriors and their leader had been bribed. They would ignore a large group of people, let alone some scouts. Patriarch Chun is gone. From a castle on the mountain of the Palace of Black Mountain came a voice of excitement. 8 people were sitting in the castle. They were the most powerful among the group that was expelled. All of them were at the peak of Second Tribulation, Heavenly God. A brown-haired, middle-aged man said with excitement, Guys, let's talk about it. When should we do it? How? Killing Lu Li was not difficult for them. It all depended on how. After all, Lu Li was valued by Fairy Tian Yun, and he was still at the Gile Mountain. If they did it openly, Fairy Tian Yun would question the master of the Palace of Black Mountain. By then, the master would order a thorough investigation, which would be troublesome. Brother Gong, I think we should send 2 warriors to the Gile Mountain to cultivate, and then we can find a chance to fight with Lu Li. A purple-haired, middle-aged man said, If there is conflict, we can fight. Then, we can set up an ambush at the foot of the mountain. Once there's a fight, we can rush up and kill Lu Li. What a lousy idea! The brown-haired, middle-aged man called Brother Gong rolled his eyes and said, That is a lame excuse. We might as well kill him openly. We have a grudge against Lu Li, and someone is going to the Gile Mountain. Then, we can set up an ambush down there. What is the difference between that and killing him openly? How about, another scholarly and young-looking powerful warrior said, Let's talk to the guards, and then we can disguise ourselves and rush up to kill Lu Li. After we kill him, we can run away immediately and go back to the Palace of Black Mountain. As long as we can't find any evidence, I don't think the master of Black Mountain will investigate. In that case, the warriors at the Gile Mountain will be guilty of dereliction of duty. Brother Gong shook his head and said, They will never agree. When Lu Li came, it was Patriarch Chun who brought him here. They know that Fairy Tian Yun values Lu Li. They will not do anything rash for us. Sending our warriors to investigate and killing are 2 different things. No. Are we not going to kill him? The purple-haired old man was angry and shouted. Of course, we must kill him, but we must find some scapegoats. If something goes wrong, they can take the blame for us. Brother Gong thought about it and said, How about this? We can arrange for some warriors to fight near the Gile Mountain to attract the warriors there. Then, we can sneak up and run away immediately after the killing. Nobody will know. Nobody can trace us. I don't think we need to do anything. An old man said, Given Lu Li's power, we can kill him easily if we send dozens of warriors. We can set up an ambush nearby. If it doesn't work, we will go up. It will be safer this way. I think it is to be foolproof. Someone added, We need to bribe Commander Yang of the Gile Mountain and ask him to cooperate. Someone is fighting near the Gile Mountain. It is normal for him to bring people there. I think he will cooperate. Okay, it is settled. Chapter 1865. It was easy to bribe Commander Yang. After all, Patriarch Gong had a thorough plan. Commander Yang didn't have to take too many risks. When there was a disturbance, Patriarch Gong and Patriarch Yang had the obligation to go and check. Not even the master of Black Mountain Palace would say anything. After Patriarch Yang was given a primordial spirit treasure, he agreed to cooperate. But he suggested Patriarch Gong to delay the action for 3 months. By then, the master of Black Mountain Palace would be away for half a month to visit his old friends. Even if something were to happen at the Black Mountain Palace, the master of Black Mountain Palace would not be around. 3 months? Okay. They had been waiting for a year. 3 months wouldn't make a difference. Judging by Lu Li's situation, he should be cultivating for a long time. If the master of Black Mountain Palace was not here and Fairy Tian Yun wanted to pursue the matter, the Black Mountain Palace would have no one to take charge. Would Fairy Tian Yun overstep her authority and clean up the mess for the Black Mountain Palace? Patriarch Gong sent someone to keep an eye on Lu Li, and someone was on standby at all times. At the same time, They tried to make the plan more perfect so that there wouldn't be any problems. Hearing that Lu Li was going to be killed, the warriors were rubbing their fists and waiting for Patriarch Gong's order. Some of them were scared. After a year, some of their resentment had faded away. They just wanted to live a comfortable life. That being said, killing Lu Li didn't require too many warriors. Patriarch Gong only prepared hundreds. Many of them were just here to cooperate. Only 30 or 40 of them would actually take action. Lu Li was cultivating in peace. He didn't notice that someone was plotting to kill him. Uncle Li was nervous. He was patrolling at the peak all the time. He would notice any sign of trouble. Time passed by. The primordial spirit Qi was consumed quickly. Thunderbolts could strengthen his body as well. The 720 acupoints were like 720 bottomless holes that could absorb energy of thunderbolts and primordial spirit Qi endlessly. Soon, 3 months had passed. Lu Li's body had been improved. He didn't know how much because there was no clear boundary. He had to find someone to test it before he could know. Lu Li's comprehension of the fundamental principle of sword intent was still the same as before. There was no sign of him achieving great success. Lu Li was not in a hurry. The fundamental principle of sword intent was so powerful that it would be worthwhile to spend years on it. Today, the Black Mountain Palace's Palace Lord Black Mountain had indeed left. Furthermore, he had not left stealthily. Instead, he had taken a few hundred people with him in a dozen or so jade carriages. Everyone in the Black Mountain Palace knew about this. The Black Mountain Palace Lord was not afraid of someone attacking his base camp, because as long as he was not dead, no one would dare to mess around. His battle prowess was ranked in the top 5 on the Heavenly Devil Island. If anyone dared to attack the Black Mountain Palace, they would suffer from his relentless counterattack. All right, seeing the Palace Lord of Black Mountain Palace leave, Old Gong and the others were excited. Everything was within their expectations. Lu Li was still cultivating. Someone from the Cloud Mountain sent a message that everything was normal. It was a good time to kill Lu Li. However, Old Gong and the others were not in a hurry. They decided to wait for 5 days before taking action. Otherwise, what if the Palace Master of Black Mountain Palace turned around? Do it. After 5 days, Old Gong gave the order. He left the Black Mountain Palace quietly with 7 powerful warriors. They could go in and out of the Black Mountain Palace freely. 2 days ago, Old Gong had arranged for hundreds of warriors to leave the mountain and wait for orders near the Jile Mountain. The 8 of them sneaked to the Jile Mountain. They could see the black thunderbolts striking down from the peak. A warrior sneaked over. He stood in front of the 8, cupped his fists, and said, "Lord Gong, everything is ready. We are waiting for your order." "Okay, let Brother 6 and the others do it." Old Gong scanned with psychic power and gave the order. The 8 of them sneaked over to see if the hundreds of warriors could carry out their plan perfectly. In an open field dozens of miles to the left of the Jile Mountain, 400 or 500 people had gathered. The 400 or 500 people were fighting openly. They were here to challenge each other. The 2 groups had grudges against each other, so they had called their friends to fight together. It was reasonable that they had to leave the Black Mountain if they wanted to fight. Even Tian Yun Zhongzi could not find any loopholes. People from both sides gathered here, cursing loudly and aggressively. Since they were close to the Jile Mountain, they soon attracted the attention of the Jile Mountain warriors. Boom, boom, boom. No one knew who started the fight, but a melee broke out. People from both sides were using long-range attacks. The sky was full of flowing lights, and the power was so great that it could be sensed from thousands of miles away. What's going on? Commander Yang of the Jile Mountain walked out of a castle at the foot of the mountain. He pretended to be angry and said, "Which bastard dares to fight near the Jile Mountain? Do you want to die?" "Commander," a soldier had already gone to investigate. He reported, "They are all people of the Black Mountain Palace. It is said that they have some grudges. Both sides have called people to fight." "Bastard," Commander Yang said angrily, "a duel is a duel. Why don't you run away?" What if the Jile Mountain collapses? Who will be responsible when the Palace Master finds out? The soldiers smiled embarrassedly. The people who started the fight were all low-level warriors. Not to mention that they were a bit far away. Even if they attacked the Gile Mountain, they might not be able to collapse it. A saber appeared in Commander Yang's hand. He said angrily, "Everyone, come with me. Take this weapon and drive these people away." Are they rebelling? Guarding the Gile Mountain was boring enough. Now that there was something interesting to watch, they were all excited. What else could they think when their commander had said so? There was nothing on the Gile Mountain. What was there to guard? All the warriors ran, with Commander Yang at once. Old Gong and the others had sneaked over secretly. In addition to the 8 of them, there were also 30-second tribulation divine gods that Old Gong had prepared. According to their plan, the 30 warriors would go up and kill Lu Li and Uncle Li first. If the 30 warriors could not kill Lu Li and Uncle Li, then all 8 of them would join the fight. But they didn't think it was necessary for them to do anything. Lu Li and Uncle Li should be strong enough to kill them easily. The 30 warriors all had their faces covered. The masks were not particularly advanced, but average warriors would not be able to see through them. The 30 warriors all wore blood-red armors with an obvious word on the chest, Blood Demon Sect. This was the standard armor of a major force of the Omen Island, the Blood Demon Sect. Old Gong used to stay at the Blood Demon Sect for a while. He was the one who gave them the armor. The armor was used to confuse the public and divert attention. Let's do it. We must kill him in one move and cut him into pieces. Old Gong looked to the top of the mountain and waved his hand. The 30 warriors dashed toward the top of the Gile Mountain like 30 foxes. Their eyes were filled with bloodthirst. They were about to kill Lu Li and humiliate Fairy Tianyan. The 30 warriors were excited. "Master, something is wrong." Uncle Li had noticed something was wrong when the fight broke out. After Commander Yang left with the warriors, Uncle Li informed Lu Li at once. Lu Li opened his eyes and rushed to Uncle Li's side. "So, this is premeditated." Lu Li used psychic power to check. When he saw the 30 warriors, a glint of killing intent rose in his eyes. He was curious. Were the 30 warriors exiled from the Cloud Mountain, or were they arranged by Yin Hong? Chapter 1866. No matter which side they were on, their purpose was clear. They were here to kill Lu Li. If they wanted to kill him, then they must be prepared to be killed. There was a one-way teleportation formation next to Lu Li, so he could run away at any time. He had Fairy Tianyun's Jade Talisman, so he could ask her for help. That being said, his defensive abilities had been increased, and he had the Golden Worms of the Void. The 30 of them must have underestimated him if they thought they could kill him. Lu Li decided to fight fire with fire and kill the 30 of them. Running away was not a solution. He wanted to use the blood of the 30 to warn the manipulator that those who wanted to kill him would have to pay the price. The 30 of them locked on to Lu Li with psychic power. They noticed that Lu Li was alerted. They stopped sneaking and flew up like arrows. The 30 of them didn't use long-range attacks because they couldn't kill Lu Li in one move. They would make a big noise and attract the attention of Chief Yang and warriors of the Palace of Black Mountain. Buzzing, Lu Li took out the mountain and put Uncle Li in. Then he retreated and rushed to the center of the peak of Gile Mountain. There were thunderbolts over there. Those warriors were not strong. Lu Li decided to let them be struck by the thunderbolts first. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 30 of them flew up and went to the peak of Gile Mountain. Seeing that Lu Li was running away, they chased after him. How could they miss such a good chance? They would chase after Lu Li to the end, even if he were to run into mountains of blades and seas of fire, let alone in the thunderstorm area. Boom, 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 the thunderbolts whooshed down. Several of the 30 were struck by thunderbolts. But they were second tribulation heaven gods, so the thunderbolts could not kill them. He was only knocked down and rolled on the ground. His body trembled a little and emitted a few wisps of black smoke. Lu Li stopped at the center. He stood there with the cold wind saber in one hand and the mountain in the other. The more than 20 warriors were overjoyed to see that Lu Li didn't run away. They sneered. Did Lu Li think he could stop them with thunderbolts? Charge! One of them roared. A huge shield appeared in his hand, and he threw it towards the sky. The shield gave out a golden glare that expanded in the wind. It covered up half of the sky and blocked all the thunderbolts. Charge! The others were overjoyed. They rushed over as well and reached Lu Li from 3 directions in an instant. They swung their weapons at Lu Li. Boom! Before the weapons could even slash down, the space started to shake. Although this group of people were all ordinary Second Tribulation heavenly gods, Second Tribulation heavenly gods' battle prowess was already very good. Any one of them could sweep through the entire god realm. Lu Li had been motionless. Now, he sneered and released many worms of the void from the mountain. Like an exploding cloud, it expanded and enveloped the dozen or so martial artists who were rushing over. In sec, they all came back to their senses. Even though they didn't see what happened in Commander Yang's crystal, they did hear that Lu Li had some horrifying insects. It was just that they didn't know Lu Li well, so they didn't pay much attention at first. Now that so many worms were swarming over and many of them had entered their bodies, they began to panic. Dying. 3 of them made up their minds. They ignored the insects and swung their weapons at Lu Li. 2 sabers with black and red air currents cut at Lu Li's neck and waist respectively. Another spear stabbed at Lu Li's temple. The spear was surrounded by some faint purple air, and its power was astonishing. Bang, bang, bang. Just when everyone thought Lu Li was going to die, 3 muffled noises came out. The 3's attacks were like pieces of wood hitting on a bronze bell. All the noises were echoing. Lu Li trembled, but he didn't even get a scratch. What? How is this possible? What the hell? How? A few exclamations of bewilderment rang out, and many people's eyes were filled with disbelief. Lu Li was only a one tribulation heavenly god. More importantly, he was so young. How strong could his defense be? If Lu Li had a strong armor of primordial spirit, then it would make sense. But there was no armor over Lu Li's body. How could Lu Li's body be so strong? This was illogical. Everyone had the same thought in their minds. Cultivating one's fleshly body required an extremely long period of time. Unless the descendants of the superclans were nourished with top-grade spirit medicines from birth, they would have to continuously cultivate their fleshly body and have a heaven-defying body refining technique. Or they could be from some strange races that were born with strong bodies. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to improve their bodies to such a horrifying state in a few decades. Lu Li was a pure-blooded human being. Since he had wandered to the Cloud Mountain and was almost killed by Commander Yang, then he must not be a disciple of a super family. Therefore, logically speaking, it was impossible for Lu Li to have such a strong body. All of a sudden, someone cried out in pain, which startled everyone. The worms of the void began to gnaw at the man's body. Lu Li made a move at the same time. He dashed out like an arrow. He did not go to attack. Instead, he dashed on while releasing worms of the void. Before the others could react, Lu Li had released millions of golden worms of the void, which enveloped the 30 warriors. What happened next was easier. Miserable cries were heard. The warriors rolled around and howled in pain. Every now and then, they would be struck by thunderbolts. Blood gushed out from their mouths, eyes, and ears. Someone's hands and feet were bitten off. They rolled around on the peak of the mountain. Some were struck by thunderbolts. Trembling, blood dyed the peak of the Gile mountain red. Miserable cries lingered on. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The Gile mountain had become hell. Someone tried to kill Lu Li. However, he was only able to step back for more than 3 feet. He couldn't even get a scratch on his skin. Well, his defensive power should be close to the peak of the Second Tribulation Heaven God realm. Lu Li didn't fight back. He just let the warriors attack him. He wanted to test his defensive power. He was satisfied with the result. According to his estimation, not even a powerful Second Tribulation Heaven God could kill him easily. He had only consumed about half of the primordial chi. When he consumed all of it, he would be able to ignore Second Tribulation Heaven God realm warriors. Nobody could kill him. What is going on? Hearing so many miserable cries, Old Gong and the others at the foot of the Gile mountain looked at each other, speechless. The 30 warriors had been on the mountain for such a long time. Not only did none of them come back, but there were so many miserable cries. What was going on? Let's go. A glint of coldness rose in Old Gong's eyes. They could not wait any longer. If they waited any longer, Commander Yang and the others might come back. They must finish this quickly and leave as soon as they could kill Luli. The 8 of them flew up like mad dragons. In an instant, they had reached the peak of the Gile Mountain. Their divine will probe the area like a tidal wave, and the scene that they discovered caused their expressions to change drastically. The 30 warriors were lying in a pool of blood. Half of them were dead. The other half were living a life worse than death. Many had their hands and feet bitten off. Half of their bodies were bitten off. Their organs and intestines were all over the ground. Luli stood on the side leisurely, unharmed and calm. Old Gong and the others were frightened. Luli felt the pressure as Old Gong and the others rushed up. The 8 of them were powerful. 3 of them could be compared to the old dragon who was gambling at the Tower of Demon Entrapment. The 8 of them posed a threat to Luli. Let's go. Luli dared not to stay any longer. He dashed forward like an arrow. He didn't even have the time to retract the worms of the void. Before Old Gong and the others could react, Luli had dashed into the one-way teleportation formation and vanished from the Gile Mountain. One-way teleportation formation? Old Gong saw through it right away. He thought of something and shouted, "This teleportation formation cannot go far. Luli must be running toward the Cloud Mountain. Let's go." Chapter 1867. If Luli hadn't run away, Patriarch Gong and the others might have hesitated for a while. But as soon as Luli ran away, Patriarch Gong and the others would think he was a coward. Naturally, Patriarch Gong and the others would not give up the chase. Also, if Luli teleported away, he would be in the wild, not in the territory of the Gile Mountain and the Cloud Mountain. No matter how they chased after him, it wouldn't be against the rules. Fairy Tian Yun could manage the affairs of the Cloud Mountain, but she couldn't manage the entire Omen Island. Apart from the cities of the Omen Island, people could fight at any place. This was the rules set by the Demon King himself. The 8 of them dashed out like mad dragons towards the Cloud Mountain. Patriarch Gong suddenly stopped after running for more than 30 miles. He said to the purple-haired old man, "Patriarch Zhao, go and mobilize the hundreds of warriors to spread out and search for Luli. Be careful that Luli escapes. We will go all the way to the Cloud Mountain. Even if Luli hasn't gone to the Cloud Mountain for now, he will go back eventually. Spread out and search for him. Once you find him, send us a message at once." Okay. Patriarch Zhao nodded. Patriarch Gong had thought it through. If Luli didn't run towards the Cloud Mountain, Patriarch Gong could still find him. Patriarch Gong turned around and flew towards the hundreds of warriors who were fighting. Patriarch Gong ran away with 6 warriors with him. Soon, Patriarch Zhao arrived at the battlefield. The hundreds of warriors were still putting on a show. They were fighting back and forth, having a great time, but they didn't use any big moves. They were just the most common attacks, which looked scary. Chief Commander Yang and the others had retreated. They all felt the noise coming from the Gile Mountain, so they hurried back. "Why are you still fighting? Stop!" Patriarch Zhao waved his hand and shouted, "The 10 of you, take dozens of warriors with you and spread out to search for Luli. When you find him, break the Jade Talisman and inform me at once." Patriarch Zhao threw out 10 Jade Talismans and ordered while pointing to the 10 warriors. The warriors here stopped their attacks. They were shocked. They didn't expect that Luli would run away. "Let's go." Hearing that Luli had run away, the warriors were in an uproar. The 10 warriors brought dozens of warriors with them and ran to all directions. Patriarch Zhao wanted to go with the others, but on second thought, he didn't think it would be a big deal if he went alone. He rolled his eyes and rushed toward the Black Mountain Palace. Less than an hour later, more than 2,000 people rushed out of the Black Mountain, divided into dozens of armies, and rushed in all directions. Patriarch Zhao went back and mobilized more than 2,000 warriors. Patriarch Zhao could not mobilize the rest. The more than 2,000 warriors wished they could cut Luli into pieces. In addition to the few hundred people, there were more than 3,000 people. They were divided into dozens of armies and were searching in all directions. The surrounding area immediately became lively. There were originally many people hiding nearby, but now they were all frightened, thinking that the people from Black Mountain Palace had gone crazy. Indeed, Luli did not run towards the Cloud Mountain. He was not as fast as Patriarch Gong and the others. If he ran towards the Cloud Mountain, he would be walking into a trap. He was running towards the south, intending to take a deeder back. He had a jade talisman in his hand. Crushing the jade talisman could not summon a divine dragon, but it could summon a powerful woman. That being said, Luli did not crush the jade talisman easily. They were just a bunch of second tribulation heaven gods. If he were to ask for help at the slightest danger, Fairy Tian Yun would belittle him. He was a man with pride and self-respect. He would not ask for help from others easily, not to mention a woman. Favors must be paid back. If one day, one would become used to relying on others for everything, he would become a good-for-nothing sooner or later. Luli flew on at a moderate speed. He tried to hide himself along the way in case he was discovered. He thought quickly, trying to figure out a way out of the current situation. Run? So what if he could run back to the Cloud Mountain? Should he go back and beg Fairy Tian Yun to send Patriarch Chun to protect him for a few more years? Putting aside the fact that he couldn't bring himself to say it, even if he did, Fairy Tian Yun might not agree. Fight! There was only one way left. He realized that the most powerful of the 8 warriors was only at the peak of Second Tribulation Heaven God Realm. According to his estimation, warriors at the peak of Second Tribulation Heaven God Realm could not kill him easily. Therefore, he still had a chance. Luli had a general idea of who these warriors were. They must be the thousands that were banished from the Cloud Mountain. The most powerful among them was only at the peak of Second Tribulation Heaven God Realm. Luli could still fight them. Uncle Li. While running, Luli communicated with Uncle Li. When he was done, Luli said, "I want to find a way to kill most of those who are hunting me. I want to frighten the others so that they will not trouble us in the future. I need your help." "Master, are you sure about this?" Uncle Li said bitterly. If it were just average warriors, he could risk his life. However, if there were warriors at the peak of Second Tribulation Heaven God Realm, he could be killed. "Let's do it. Don't worry. I will do my best to protect you." Luli made up his mind. He let Uncle Li out from the mountain and went in himself. It was Uncle Li's turn to take Luli on his way. Hiding in the mountain was like a sharp knife, ready to kill at any time. Warriors at the peak of Second Tribulation Heaven God Realm were strong. That being said, once millions of worms of the void entered their bodies, they would not be able to stand it. By then, Luli could wear them out bit by bit. Luli had given the order. Uncle Li had no other choice but to move forward with the mountain. He dared not to go too fast. In an hour, dozens of people caught up. These dozens of people scanned the surroundings with their spiritual will and easily locked onto Uncle Li. Since they were from the Cloud Mountain, some of them knew Uncle Li. When one of them shouted, dozens swarmed over. "Master, there are dozens of them. They are not that powerful, but there are too many of them." Uncle Li sent a voice transmission after scanning the area with his spiritual will. Luli used psychic power to check and said, "Cooperate with me. Kill the dozens of them and then run." "Okay." Uncle Li pretended that he was discovered and ran away in a panic. However, he slowed down on purpose so that the dozens could catch up with him and surround him. "Charge!" The more than 40 warriors swarmed toward Uncle Li. More than a dozen of them launched ranged attacks from a distance. Right at that moment, the mountain in Uncle Li's hand glowed. Uncle Li disappeared into the mountain, and Luli came out. Boom, boom, boom. More than a dozen attacks landed on Luli. Even the hill around Luli was affected. At that moment, the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. The sound of explosions was deafening. Dust was rising up and mud and stones were flying everywhere. There was a huge pit in the hill. Whoosh! A man flew out from the pit. His clothes were torn and his hair was messy, but there was no trace of blood on his skin. His exposed muscles contained an extremely tyrannical strength. He tapped on the ground with one leg, and his body roared like a giant beast as he rushed into the crowd. Bang, 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 several weapons landed on Lu Li's body and head. However, with a muffled noise, some weapons were knocked away. Lu Li swung his fist and punched at a warrior's head. That warrior was smashed away at once. His face was covered in blood. Clank, clank, several more attacks landed on Lu Li. However, they felt they had hit a relic weapon. They could not inflict any harm on Lu Li. The warriors were dumbfounded. They looked at Lu Li not as if he was a human, but as if he was an ancient beast that had cultivated into a human form. Go to hell, Lu Li shouted. The mountain glowed as swarms of golden worms of the void swarmed out. The worms of the void expanded and enveloped the more than a dozen warriors nearby. Chapter 1868. All of them were average Second Tribulation divine gods. Some of them were even at the peak of the One Tribulation. Once warriors of this level were enveloped by the golden worms of the void, their fates were sealed. As soon as the worms of the void enveloped those warriors, Lu Li ignored them. He dashed toward another group of warriors like a violent dragon. After his physical body had become stronger, his speed had increased significantly. He was probably even faster than Uncle Li by a few notches. Before those warriors could react, Lu Li had dashed over. Those warriors began to attack in a hurry. But the long-range attacks were too weak. All they did was slow Lu Li down a bit. What is his body made of? Those warriors were dumbfounded. Lu Li was not knocked back. Apart from his torn robe, he was not injured at all. His body was so strong that many people were trembling in fear. Boom! Lu Li rushed over and punched a man. When he punched, Lu Li suddenly felt that all the acupoints in his body were resonating. He felt the surging energy in his acupoints was about to burst out at any moment. Lu Li was stunned. He stared at his fist with his eyes wide open, and his eyes became confused. He concentrated his psychic power in his acupoints, trying to savor the feeling. That was a miraculous feeling. He felt the strength in his body was like hundreds of rivers. The moment he punched, all of them were moving. The hundreds of rivers surged forward, turning into raging waves that would drown and destroy everything. Between powerful warriors, life and death could be decided in an instant. There were more than a dozen warriors in front of Lu Li. How come he was stunned? The more than a dozen warriors in front of him were overjoyed. They moved at the same time. They swung their weapons and attacked Lu Li from countless angles. Bang, 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 bang. There came some muffled sounds, echoing like a wooden hammer hitting a bell. Lu Li was smashed back for more than a dozen steps. But he was not injured at all. Is he a monster in human form? His body is so strong. The warriors were speechless. Just now, they had all used their most powerful attacks, and yet they could not hurt Lu Li one bit. Didn't they say that Lu Li was only a One Tribulation divine god? His defense must be stronger than that of the primordial spirit armor. Rivers, yes, rivers. Lu Li's eyes glowed. He threw his head back and laughed. Then, he dashed over again. One of them swung a huge hammer at Lu Li. Lu Li swung his fist and fearlessly faced the attack. Scram! Lu Li bellowed. At that moment, all the acupoints in his body contracted. Then a strand of energy flowed out from each acupoint. Lightning bolts gathered around his fist. When Lu Li's fist made contact with the hammer, it suddenly glowed in a white light. Bang! As if he had been hit by a mountain, the hand of the huge man with the hammer was cut open. The handle of the hammer was broken, and the head of the hammer flew back like a shooting star. Lu Li's fist became a blur of white light that was enlarging in front of his eyes. Boom! With a loud explosion, the giant man's head exploded into pieces. His brain and blood splattered all over the face of a martial artist who was rushing over from behind. Lu Li didn't take the chance to attack the warrior. Instead, he was stunned again. He looked at his own fist with ecstasy. All rivers flow to the sea. This strength is so strong. Lu Li felt his blood was boiling. Just now, the feeling of having absolute strength was exhilarating. He even felt he could smash open the primordial spirit armor and kill Uncle Li in one move. Ow! The warriors around were stunned as well. That huge man was strong in defense. How could he be killed by Lu Li in one move? How strong was Lu Li? Charge! Lu Li shouted. He didn't send out more worms of the void. He dashed over and punched at a warrior's chest with a shrill noise. Bang, bang, bang. That warrior was wearing an armor, but it shouldn't be the primordial spirit armor. The armor was shattered layer by layer. Lu Li's fist went into the warrior's chest and came out from his back, leaving a hole in his chest. Bang! Lu Li pulled out his fist and then swung it at the warrior. The warrior was smashed away. Lu Li kept on rushing forward. Every time he swung his fist, someone would be seriously injured or smashed to death. It wasn't that no one fought back, but their attacks couldn't harm Lu Li at all. Only one of them managed to leave a white mark on Lu Li's back. It was just a mark. Not even a drop of blood was spilled. On the other side, the warriors that were engulfed by the worms of the void were screaming, rolling around, and dying. The teeth of the golden worms of the void were too sharp. How could this group of weak warriors stand it? Run! 7 or 8 warriors were killed or injured by Lu Li. The rest were scared out of their wits. They ran to all sides in a frenzy. Lu Li was in a killing frenzy. He would not let them go. He released the worms of the void and controlled them to go after 5 or 6 warriors in one direction while he went in another. The worms of the void were much faster than him. They caught up with the 5 or 6 running away. Needless to say, the result was the same. Lu Li sped up. He caught up with the 7 or 8 warriors and punched them one by one. If he could not kill them, he would break their legs first. Lu Li's robe was ragged and his hair was unkempt. He was covered in blood, but it was all from his enemies. He looked like a wild man that had gone mad. The ferocious chi and energy coming from him were more like that of a beast. After the time for one incense stick to burn, all the more than 30 warriors had become dead bodies. None of them survived. Lu Li had killed them all. He was not satisfied yet. He looked around excitedly. Making sure that there was no one alive, he flew back and put away all the worms of the void. Buzzing, Lu Li let Uncle Li out. He waved his hand and said, "Clean up the battlefield and collect the loot." Seeing that Lu Li was covered in blood and was in a mess, Uncle Li asked with concern, "Master, are you hurt?" "No, it's not my blood." Lu Li waved his hand. He took out some clean water to clean the blood. Uncle Li frowned. He used psychic power to check. Soon, he was taken aback. He was not surprised that Lu Li could kill the more than 30 warriors. The worms of the void could eat them all. However, it was clear that many of the bodies were not eaten by the worms of the void. It was more likely that they were smashed to death. Can it be? Uncle Li's eyes were wide open, staring at Lu Li, who was covered in blood. Uncle Li asked in shock, "Master, did you kill them?" "Of course not." Lu Li rolled his eyes and said, "If I didn't kill them, do you think you did?" Uncle Li came back to his senses. He waved his hand and said, "No, I mean yes." Chapter 1869. Uncle Li was speechless. Lu Li was progressing so fast that Uncle Li was numb from the astonishment. Back when Uncle Li and Yin Jun went down to the mortal world, Lu Li was no match for them. He had to run into the ancient demon's dead ground. In the end, Yin Jun had to rely on the powerful inhibition formation in the ancient demon's dead ground to kill him. Back then, Lu Li seemed so weak that he could be killed at any time. Soon, several years had passed. Lu Li's growth was beyond Uncle Li's imagination. The evolution of the worms of the void could not be attributed to Lu Li's ability. He was just lucky. Uncle Li was already shocked that Lu Li's defensive abilities had improved so fast. Now, Lu Li could kill him with one punch. "What are you waiting for?" Lu Li frowned, seeing that Uncle Li didn't move. There were more people chasing him. He must leave this place at once. He must wander around and kill them one by one. It is a pity that I cannot fly in the void. Lu Li was disappointed. If he could, he would be able to come and go as he pleased. Not to mention these few people. Even if tens of millions of martial artists were mobilized, they might not be able to kill him. Uncle Li went to collect the spoils and put away the interspatial rings. Lu Li cleaned himself up and changed into a clean robe. He dashed into the mountain and asked Uncle Lee to take him away. Many people must have his portrait. Comparatively speaking, Uncle Lee didn't have as many people paying attention to him. Therefore, Uncle Lee could cover his tracks better by taking him with him. Luli could rush out at any time. South go. Before the more than 30 warriors were killed, Uncle Zhao had been notified. He sent someone to send a message to Brother Gong and many warriors to go after Luli to the south. Nearly 3,000 people rushed over, scaring the nearby cultivators so much that they trembled in fear. What was happening here had attracted the attention of the Palace of Black Mountain. But when the powerful warriors of the Palace of Black Mountain heard the news, they just smiled. Luli was not making trouble at the Palace of Black Mountain anyway. They didn't care about anything else. They were more than happy to watch the fight outside. Brother Gong and the other four didn't move when they heard the news. They didn't need to go after Luli with more than 2,000 warriors. They decided to stay near the Mountain of Clouds. Luli could go anywhere as long as he didn't go into the Mountain of Clouds. Old Gong and the others were guarding the Heavenly Cloud Mountain for Fairy Tianyun to see. They wanted to humiliate Fairy Tianyun. Didn't you kick us out because of Luli? We will kill Luli outside of the Cloud Mountain. According to the rules set by the Asmodean king, people were free to fight in the wild. Fairy Tianyun couldn't say anything if Patriarch Gong and the others tried to kill Luli. Now that Old Gong and the others had joined the Black Mountain Palace, they were part of the Black Mountain Palace. If Fairy Tianyun wanted to kill them, she would have to think twice. Uncle Lee was running at full speed, which was what Luli had asked him to do. Luli hoped that when the people behind him caught up, he could kill them all bit by bit so that they wouldn't dare to make trouble for him in the future. In just 4 hours, the army behind them had caught up. This time, there were more people chasing after them, more than 300 people. Uncle Lee, come in. There were too many of them, and Uncle Lee could be killed easily. Sneak attacks would be pointless. Luli rushed out, ready to face them head-on. This is good. Even though there were many of them, none of them was as powerful as Patriarch Gong. Luli had some confidence. No matter how many warriors with low abilities there were, they would just be courting death. Charge! Seeing that Luli had shown up, the more than 300 people rushed over with bloodshot eyes. Hundreds of them started to attack from afar. At that moment, it was as if the entire sky in the north was lit up and the sky was trembling. From Luli's point of view, it was as if a meteor shower was falling down on him. Whoosh! Luli sprinted over like a beast. He actually started to charge back at the hundreds of people. He dodged to the left and right. Even though he was hit by the attacks from afar now and then, he only trembled a bit and slowed down a bit. Then, he would keep on running. Seeing that Luli had withstood dozens of attacks and was getting closer, the more than 300 people looked solemn. It seemed that Luli was more powerful than they had imagined. He dared to charge back at more than 300 people on his own. His temperament was amazing. In the blink of an eye, Luli had reached them. The more than 300 people didn't have time to think. They all swarmed toward Luli. The dozens at the front targeted Luli. More than a dozen weapons fell on Luli like raindrops. Bang, 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 bang. More than a dozen muffled sounds came out. Apart from one person who left a cut on Luli, the others couldn't inflict any harm on Luli. Die. Luli raised his head and shouted. He punched with his fists. 2 warriors were smashed away, and the ones behind them were smashed away as well. Luli kicked the ground with one leg and dashed into the middle of the crowd. Bang, bang, bang. Weapons rained down from the warriors inside. Just like before, few could hurt Luli. Most of the weapons were bounced off when they landed on Luli. Buzzing, when Luli reached the crowd, he began to release worms of the void. It was not that he couldn't kill the more than 300 people with his fists. It was just that it would take him too long. If more people were to catch up, he would be in for a tough fight. Therefore, he must finish the fight quickly. He had to kill the more than 300 people quickly and then run away to lengthen the battle line. He couldn't let the armies surround him and the powerful warriors find a chance to set up a trap to kill him. Swarms of worms of the void swarmed out and expanded. In an instant, dozens of people were covered. Finally, those outside were alarmed and they retreated. They didn't know exactly how strong the worms were, but somehow they felt uneasy. Bang, bang, bang. While attacking, Luli released worms at the same time. Soon, there were more than 10 million worms flying to all directions. In a time for 5 breaths, the worms had reached more than 200 people. Some were frightened while others were slow to realize what was going on. They just ignored the worms and continued to attack Luli. However, after several rounds of attacks, Luli only had a few cuts on his body, while more than 20 people were killed by Luli. Many people finally came to their senses. Luli's defense seemed to be strong. His attacks seemed to be particularly fierce. Many worms had gotten into their bodies. One of them fell to the ground and rolled around. Everyone else came to their senses because the worms in their bodies had begun to gnaw at them. They hurriedly controlled the divine power or energy in their bodies to suppress the void worms. Some people even ran away in a panic. Bang, bang, bang. Luli dashed on and on. His fists were vigorous. Every time he punched, someone would be seriously injured or killed. He was unstoppable. He was like an invincible god of war. Run! Someone began to feel scared. He shouted and tried to run. However, he only made it for a few hundred feet before he fell to the ground. The biting of the worms in the void was so painful that he could not run away. Chapter 1870. 5 days. For 5 days, there was a storm of blood at the south of the Gile mountain. At first, Luli was the one being hunted down. Then, Luli started to fight back. Of the nearly 3,000 warriors, at least half were killed by Luli in 5 days. Luli became braver as he fought. After several battles, he had absolute confidence in his defense. He stopped running away. Instead, he started to fight. Warriors hiding nearby ran away. Luli would kill anyone he saw, regardless of whether they were chasing him or not. He would kill anyone he saw. Patriarch Zhao only mobilized 3,000 warriors, and Luli killed about 1,500 of them. As a matter of fact, Luli had killed at least 1,800 warriors. The other 300 were implicated. Luli was having a great time. He felt he could not stop. He thought the warriors he had met so far were too weak. He was looking around for Patriarch Gong and the others. He wanted to see if he could fight them head-on. Patriarch Gong and the others were still at the Cloud Mountain, but Patriarch Zhao was here. Another day passed. Finally, Luli came face to face. Patriarch Zhao's purple hair was eye-catching. He came with more than 200 warriors in a formidable array. Patriarch Zhao's chi and blood were so strong that he looked like a purple lion. Okay, there happened to be a powerful warrior at the peak of the second tribulation. Luli stood on top of a small hill, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. He had been having a great time, and he was eager to fight Patriarch Zhao. Surround him. Patriarch Zhao had been informed of the recent situation. He was solemn. He didn't rush over with his warriors rashly. Instead, he waved his hand and asked the warriors to separate and surround Luli. He didn't ask the more than 200 warriors to make a move because they might not be able to stand Luli's horrifying bugs. Patriarch Zhao decided to end Luli's life in person. "Luli, let's fight," old Zhao bellowed, his voice like the roar of a dragon or a tiger. Violent battle intent surged from his body as a giant war blade appeared in his hand. It was clearly a chaos spirit heavenly artifact. Divine light swirled around the blade, and it glowed brightly. Come on. Luli was in no mood to kill the average second tribulation heaven gods. He fought back without showing any weakness. He stomped heavily on the small mountain, and the small mountain immediately exploded. His body rose into the air, and he turned into a stream of light, rushing toward Elder Zhao. Good. Thunderclap slash. Old Zhao roared as he rushed forward. He brandished his sword with iron rings, and a few iron rings clashed with the blade, producing a strange sound. A soul attack. Luli felt a pain in his eardrums as strands of strange energy invaded his soul. His mind spun, and he pretended to be confused. His speed was greatly reduced, as if he had been hit by a soul attack. All right. Patriarch Zhao was overjoyed. He waved his saber even more fiercely, and the strange sound became more and more ear-piercing. He drew an arc with his saber and hacked at Lu Li's neck at an oblique angle. At that moment, Lu Li's eyes became clear again. He turned his head, turned over, and got close to Patriarch Zhao. Then he punched back. Lu Li's sudden awakening disappointed Patriarch Zhao. He was stunned for a moment as well. When Lu Li punched at him, Patriarch Zhao could no longer dodge. A glint of coldness rose in Patriarch Zhao's eyes. He didn't care about Lu Li's attack anymore. Patriarch Zhao smashed at Lu Li's back with his other hand. Bang bang. With two muffled sounds, Lu Li and Patriarch Zhao were both smashed away. Lu Li felt suffocated. Patriarch Zhao's move was not an average one. It must be an attack of fundamental principle. Patriarch Zhao was not feeling well either. The armor on his chest was cracked, and he felt a burning pain. He felt his bones were cracked. Lu Li's strength was beyond Patriarch Zhao's imagination. Patriarch Zhao didn't have a Chaos Heaven treasure armor. An average armor could not stand one strike from Lu Li. Fortunately, Patriarch Zhao had been cultivating for many years. His body was strong, and he had a special defensive skill. Nice! Come on! Lu Li dashed out from underground and dashed toward Patriarch Zhao. Patriarch Zhao was not to be outdone. He swung his saber at Lu Li. Patriarch Zhao's saber was a Chaos Heaven treasure, and he had a powerful, fundamental principle. He didn't believe that Lu Li could stand it. Bang! This time, Lu Li did it. Patriarch Zhao's saber was going to land on Lu Li's head. Lu Li dodged, and the saber landed on Patriarch Zhao's left shoulder. When Patriarch Zhao thought Lu Li's shoulder was going to be cut open, his saber only went 3 inches into Lu Li's shoulder and could not go any further. Lu Li's eyes glowed. He punched at Patriarch Zhao's chest with one hand and grabbed the saber with the other. Bang, bang, bang. The armor on Patriarch Zhao's chest was cracked. A surge of force came. Patriarch Zhao spat out some blood, and he was smashed away as well. He should have grabbed the saber with one hand, but Lu Li grabbed it. Patriarch Zhao's body could not stand such a strong force. He lost his grip on the saber and was smashed away. Nice! Lu Li took a risky move. Taking Patriarch Zhao's Chaos Heaven treasure saber equaled to cutting off one of Patriarch Zhao's arms. What made him happier than taking down the saber was that his body had actually resisted old Zhao's attack. Although he didn't know if it was the strongest attack, it showed that he now had the ability to fight against a warrior at the peak of the second tribulation. Lu Li put the saber back into the mountain. Ignoring the blood gushing out from his shoulder, Lu Li rushed forward and approached Patriarch Zhao. Patriarch Zhao's eyes were filled with anger. His only Chaos Heaven treasure was taken away by Lu Li. Patriarch Zhao rushed over in a rage and began to fight with Lu Li. Without a weapon, Patriarch Zhao had to rely on his palms. He had a strange palm skill that could kill an average Second Tribulation heaven god in one move. However, Lu Li's defense was too strong. The two of them exchanged dozens of moves. Lu Li was getting stronger and stronger while Patriarch Zhao was being pushed back. Patriarch Zhao's defense was strong, and Lu Li's attack was not as strong. That being said, Patriarch Zhao felt frustrated that he was being suppressed. Lu Li hadn't even passed the second tribulation. Bang! Patriarch Zhao was smashed into a mountain. Lu Li followed him in. Patriarch Zhao had an idea. He lowered his voice and said, Lu Li, how about we stop? Give my saber back to me, and I will leave with my men. I will never target you again. Give your saber back to you? Lu Li sneered. The mountain glowed as golden worms of the void whooshed out. Lu Li sneered and said, I don't have a saber, but I have many worms. You can have them all. They were so close that Patriarch Zhao could not dodge. Hundreds of thousands of worms of the void entered his body at once. Patriarch Zhao knew how strong the worms were. He mobilized a strange ability to suppress the worms of the void at once. That being said, one person could not multitask. Since Patriarch Zhao was busy dealing with the worms of the void, he could not spare any attention to deal with Lu Li. Lu Li grabbed Patriarch Zhao's neck with one hand and punched at Patriarch Zhao's head with the other. Boom, boom, boom. Under the observation of hundreds of psychic powers, Lu Li's fists landed on Patriarch Zhao's head over and over again. Patriarch Zhao was fighting back, but Lu Li did not care. In the time for a few breaths, Lu Li had landed at least 100 punches. Patriarch Zhao's head was bleeding. In the end, Lu Li's fists landed on Patriarch Zhao's head and crushed it. Run. Chapter 1871. Old Zhao is dead, killed by Lu Li. Lao Gong and the others were all shocked when they heard the news. When they heard that Lu Li was on a killing spree, they wondered if the information was wrong. When they heard the news, they were completely stunned. It was true that Lu Li was a first tribulation god. Everyone had checked. The energy of a first tribulation god and a second tribulation god were completely different. A first tribulation god could already kill an average second tribulation god. Zhao was a warrior at the peak of the second tribulation, and everyone knew how strong he was. How could he be killed by Lu Li? Zhang He, go confirm it. Lao Gong and the others all thought that they had sent the wrong message. Lao Gong asked a person at the peak of the second tribulation stage to confirm the news. Could it be fake news to trick them into leaving the vicinity? Then Lu Li took the chance to sneak into the Cloud Mountain. A white-haired elder flew away to inquire about the authenticity of the news. Lao Gong and the others looked at each other and felt a burning pain on their faces. If Patriarch Zhao was really killed, then it would be like a slap in the face by Lu Li. They would also consider if they should continue to kill Lu Li. After all, if Lu Li could kill Patriarch Zhao, it meant that he could kill them as well. Whoosh, in empty sky cloud, a figure flew quickly and quickly rushed to the summit of Sky Cloud Peak. That person walked into Elder Chen's palace, and then Elder Chen hurriedly walked into the main palace. Fairy, Patriarch Chen bowed to the empty palace and said, I have just received news that Lu Li killed Zhao Rui. Who is Zhao Rui? Fairy Tian Yun's ethereal voice sounded. After a pause, she said again, Are you an expert of the Black Mountain Palace? Yes and no. Patriarch Chen explained, He used to be one of us. You drove him out, and he joined the palace of Black Mountain. Not long ago, he went with Gong Zizai and the others to kill Lu Li. In the past few days, Lu Li had slaughtered more than 1,000 people and just killed Zhao Rui. But Zhao Rui is at the peak of second tribulation. Fairy Tian Yun was slightly stunned. She transmitted the message and muttered, This kid has grown so fast? How long had it been? He could already kill a peak second tribulation cultivator? Could it be that he had refined all of the primordial energy? Even if he were to refine it, it would only increase his defense. Could he have comprehended a supreme, true meaning? I don't think so. Patriarch Chen denied this according to the information reported by the scouts. He said, the scout said that Lu Li smashed Zhao Rui to death with his fists. He killed the more than 1,000 warriors with his fists as well. Punched him to death? Fairy Tian Yun's voice fluctuated again. Could it be that the divine body has been formed? It's possible. Patriarch Chen nodded and said, Fairy, have you noticed that Lu Li's immortal body is the mighty body? Just like Emperor Z, his physical body is not only strong in defense, but it is also ferocious in offense. This brat, could it be that he had obtained the true inheritance of the Violet Emperor? If he figured it out himself, wouldn't that be too heaven-defying? Overlord, godly physique. Fairy Tianyan thought about it and said, Patriarch Shun, go out and check on Lu Li. If he has a small success divine physique, take care of him. Don't let him die. I don't think that's a good idea. Patriarch Shun frowned. He cupped his fists and said, Gong Zizai and the others are from the palace of Black Mountain now. They are patriarchs of our Mount Heaven Cloud. If we deal with them and the Black Mountain knows about it, I am afraid that they will not be happy. Fairy Tian Yun snorted and said, Lu Li was attacked at the Jile Mountain. I haven't settled the score with the Black Mountain yet. Go ahead, but do not do anything unless it is absolutely necessary. Let Lu Li practice more. Do not show up unless he is on the verge of death. Yes. Patriarch Chen cupped his fists and left. Soon, he disappeared into the thick fog in a blur. The hall was silent for a moment, and Fairy Tian Yun's murmur sounded again. This brat's growth rate is astonishing. Could it be that there will be a second Purple Emperor? There's only one overlord godly physique in history. Johnny came back after half a day. He had received accurate information that Patriarch Zhao was indeed killed by Lu Li. Lu Li was still wandering around the world, looking for other people to kill. Patriarch Gong and the others could not sit still anymore. The few of them gathered together and discussed countermeasures. Should they advance or retreat? If they were to retreat now, they could hide in the Black Mountain Palace and cultivate in peace. Nothing would happen, but they would be disgraced. Many people at the Black Mountain Palace were paying attention to this. They would not be able to lift their heads up in the Black Mountain Palace, let alone have a better development. If they were to fight, they might be killed by Lu Li. After all, Patriarch Zhao was killed by Lu Li before. They were at risk of dying as well. Gong Zizai and the others discussed for a while. Finally, 2 of them decided to retreat, and the other 5 decided to advance. 2 of them chickened out. They didn't want to fight over personal feelings anymore. Staying alive was better than anything else. Also, the 2 of them were afraid that Fairy Tian Yun would intervene. Gong Zizai and the other 4 couldn't let it go. Buddha fought for incense, and humans fought for pride. If they couldn't vent their anger, they would feel uncomfortable for a long time in the future, which would affect their cultivation. Therefore, the 5 decided to take the risk and kill Lu Li. The 5 of them no longer stayed at the Cloud Mountain. They rushed towards the area where Lu Li was and took the initiative to find and kill Lu Li. Lu Li wasn't running away anyway. Instead, he was looking for people to kill. It should be easy to find him. Lu Li's confidence was boosted after he killed Patriarch Zhao. He was indeed looking for warriors. He was ready to put an end to this once and for all. If he couldn't kill or defeat Gong Zizai and the others, he would never have a peaceful day at the Jile Mountain. He couldn't stay at the Cloud Mountain all the time or beg Fairy Tian Yun to send Patriarch Chun to protect him. He had been fighting for the past few days. Actually, he was trying to figure out how to use the energy in the 720 acupoints better. The energy here was too strong. If he could use it well, Lu Li believed that his attacking power would be even stronger. Also, if the energy could be used for defense, Lu Li believed that his defensive power would be enhanced. Now, he could only rely on his body. I can mobilize the energy to attack, but how can I mobilize it for defense? Lu Li had been thinking about this recently. He ran around quickly, looking for warriors. His purpose was clear. He wanted to find some people to attack him so that he could try to mobilize the energy in his acupoints to enhance his defense. After running for more than 4 hours, Lu Li suddenly locked on his 17 or 18 people in front of him with psychic power. He didn't care if they were here to kill him or not. His eyes lit up with excitement. He dashed forward like a huge beast. Lu Li, when the 17 or 18 people saw Lu Li, they all showed fear in their eyes. He didn't even try to attack. Instead, he ran in 3 different directions. Running, Lu Li had gone through so much trouble to find these people. How could he let them run away? He glanced over and went after them to the left. There were 8 people running together. Lu Li was much faster than them. Soon he caught up with them. Seeing that they couldn't get away, the 8 people turned around and charged at Lu Li. That's it. Why are you running? Lu Li grinned. The 8 people were not strong in attacking, so they were perfect for him to experiment. He would let them attack while he tried to use the energy in his acupoints to enhance his defense. Chapter 1872. The 8 of them fought back, but they didn't use any long-range attacks. Lu Li's defense was so strong that long-range attacks would be pointless. Charge! The 8 of them rushed over. Seeing that Lu Li didn't take the initiative to attack, they didn't hesitate. They swung their weapons and attacked Lu Li fiercely. The 8 weapons landed on Lu Li almost at the same time. Bang, 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 8 muffled sounds came out. Lu Li was knocked back for several steps. The 8 of them looked at Lu Li and felt hopeless. Lu Li was not injured at all. The 8 of them had thought that their attacks were powerful, but they couldn't break Lu Li's defense, not even his skin. Whoosh, Lu Li rushed over again, but he still didn't attack. The 8 of them attacked out of instinct, and Lu Li was knocked back again. The 8 of them were surprised. Lu Li didn't attack again? The 8 of them had seen how Lu Li killed Patriarch Zhao. They believed that as long as Lu Li waved his fist, the 8 of them would be killed in an instant. Whoosh, Lu Li rushed over again. Still, he didn't attack. The 8 of them were confused. Was Lu Li trying to show off his strong defense? Or was he trying to give them hope and then make them feel hopeless? Bang, bang, bang. 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. The 8 of them were confused. Lu Li rushed over again and again, but he was knocked back again and again. Lu Li didn't attack once. Not even one insect was released. Is he a masochist? Does he like to be hacked? The 8 of them had the same idea. Even if Lu Li wouldn't be hurt by their attacks, he would be in pain. This was not a game of cat and mouse, right? Moo! The 8 of them knocked Lu Li back again. One of them shouted. He didn't want to play with Lu Li anymore. If they couldn't kill Lu Li, then what was the point of their attacks? The others ran as well, but Lu Li was faster than them. Soon, he caught up with them. Lu Li was close to them. One of them cut back out of instinct, but his attack was not powerful enough. Lu Li didn't fall back. Seeing Lu Li behind him, the man was stunned. He stopped moving his saber, wondering if he should continue. Hack! After the time for one breath, Lu Li couldn't help but shout. The man was startled. He kept hacking at Lu Li's head with his sword, making clanging sounds. Pervert! The rest of the people were speechless. They looked at Lu Li, standing still and letting that martial artist hack at him continuously. Lu Li even closed his eyes at this moment, as if he was enjoying it. Split up. One of them secretly made a hand gesture and transmitted his voice. The others looked at each other and split into 3 groups, fleeing in 3 different directions. Xiao! Lu Li made his move at this moment. He dashed to the left as if he had teleported. He punched out with his fists and hit the 2 fleeing men on the left. With 2 explosive sounds, the 2 men's backs were directly smashed through, and they were smashed to death. You are not allowed to split up, or you will be killed without mercy. Lu Li shouted with a murderous look on his face. People who were running in the other 2 directions all stopped in their tracks. They looked back at the 2 who were killed by Lu Li and were terrified. Lu Li was faster than them, and his attacks were ferocious. If they didn't listen to Lu Li, it would be too easy for Lu Li to hunt them down. None of them could survive. The remaining 6 dared not to split up. They didn't even dare to run together. The 6 of them looked at each other and rushed towards Lu Li. Then they knelt down. Lord Lu, we were coerced by Gong's eye. We didn't want to come. Please be generous and spare our lives. Yes, yes. My lord, we were all coerced. I have parents and children. My son is only a few months old. Please let me go. Lord, as long as you let us go, we will do anything to repay you in our next lives. The 6 kept kowtowing, begging Lu Li to let them go. One of them even had tears and snot on his face, looking very pitiful. Get up, or I will kill you right now, Lu Li said coldly. The 6 stood up at once. Lu Li waved his hand and said, keep running and keep attacking me like just now. Don't talk too much, or I will kill you right now. Seeing Lu Li's murderous look, the 6 dared not to say anything more. They got up and ran forward at once. Lu Li caught up with them like a ghost, and then the 6 started to attack. Just like that, they ran wildly. Lu Li chased after them, but he never fought back. The 6 kept on attacking Lu Li. Lu Li's eyes became blurred. He focused his mind on his body, trying to mobilize his energy to strengthen his defense. They had been running for 6 hours, and Lu Li didn't do anything. The 6 saw a glimmer of hope. As long as they could make it to the Black Mountain, Lu Li couldn't chase them into the Black Mountain. They were not far away from the Black Mountain. They could make it there in 10 hours at most. They sped up and kept attacking Lu Li, fearing that he would kill them if he was not satisfied. They ran into many people along the way. They were scared to see Lu Li. They had thought that Lu Li would come after them, but Lu Li didn't even look at them. He kept chasing after the 6. What surprised them was that Lu Li didn't do anything. He just kept chasing after the 6. Another 6 hours passed by. Lu Li still hadn't killed them. The six were getting more and more excited. In another 4 hours, they would reach the Black Mountain. Lu Li's eyes were blurred. He looked like an idiot. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another hour later, they heard some noises coming from ahead. They checked with psychic power and found 5 familiar faces. They were overjoyed because it was Gong Zizai and the other 4. Lu Li, who was in a daze, suddenly came to his senses at this moment. He looked forward with lightning speed. He sped up and smashed at 2 heads with his fists. Boom! 2 heads were blasted off. Lu Li swung his fists again, and the remaining 5 were smashed away. 2 died miserably, and the other 2 were badly injured. Crack! Lu Li jumped up and stomped one to death. Then he jumped up again and killed another. Finally, he looked at Gong Zizai and the other 4 who were rushing over. Lu Li. Gong Zizai was enraged to see Lu Li kill the 6 right in front of them. He shouted, I, Gong Zizai, will not be a man if I don't kill you today. Lu Li sneered and said, I have been looking for you for a long time. You could have gone to heaven, but you chose to break into hell. Presumptuous. An old man took out a saber, pointed it at Lu Li, and said, You have some tricks and killed some people. Do you really think you are so powerful? Today I will show you real power. Chapter 1873. Lu Li had been chasing after the 6 for a while. He had been studying for a while, but he did not make much progress. He had not figured out how to mobilize the energy from his 720 acupoints for defense. That being said, killing Patriarch Zhao had boosted his confidence. Even though there were 5 warriors at the peak of the second tribulation here, Lu Li was not afraid. Instead, he was filled with fighting spirit. Maybe only a high-intensity battle and a life-and-death crisis could stimulate his potential and allow him to mobilize his energy. He had been through this many times. Every time, he could make a breakthrough in the face of a life-or-death crisis. This time, he wanted to have a try. Charge! Gong Zizai and the others wasted no more time. The 5 of them fanned out. Gong Zizai charged at Lu Li from the front, and the other 4 flanked him from the left and right. This time, the 5 of them had made up their minds. Either Lu Li or they would die. If they could not kill Lu Li, they would not be able to hold their heads high at the Black Mountain and would become a joke at the Omen Island. They all had enemies outside. Death would be their only outcome after they left the Omen Island. Whoosh, the 5 were faster than Lu Li. In an instant, they had reached him. Almost at the same time, Lu Li moved. He could not allow the 5 to surround him. He could not stand 5 warriors at the peak of the second tribulation. Therefore, he dashed to the left. It just so happened that 2 warriors were coming at him. The 2 unsheathed their weapons and hacked at Lu Li. One of them had a spear and the other a dagger. The spear and the dagger were surrounded by airstreams and glistening runes. They seemed to be quite intimidating. Since Lu Li was dashing toward them, he could not dodge their attacks. He had to face them head-on. He swept away the spear coming from the left with one hand and punched at the dagger coming from the right with the other. Bang! Bang! With 2 muffled sounds, the spear was knocked away by Lu Li. The dagger, on the other hand, was more agile. It moved in an arc and cut Lu Li's wrist. Lu Li's arm was cut open. The dagger was clearly a primordial treasure, and the warrior was strong. The flesh on Lu Li's arm was cut open, and his bones could be seen. Buzzing, Lu Li paid no attention to his wounds. The worms of the void swarmed out from the mountain. The worms of the void expanded and swarmed toward the 2 beside him. The man with the dagger was right next to Lu Li. He could not dodge and was enveloped by the worms of the void. The other person's reaction was faster, and he quickly retreated. He had heard of how powerful these insects were, so he naturally avoided them if he could avoid them. His speed was very fast, and he had retreated hundreds of miles in an instant. It would be very difficult for the insects to catch up. Gong Zizai, who was chasing after Lu Li, made his move. He suddenly punched at Lu Li. Wrong. It wasn't a single fish shadow, but countless fist shadows. The fist shadows overlapped and looked like a real fist. The fist shadow was powerful. Cracks appeared in the space, and there was a noise that could crack rocks and gold. The fish shadow was so fast that it reached Lu Li in an instant and landed on his back. Bang! Lu Li felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. He spat out blood and flew forward like a kite with a broken string. He suddenly turned around in midair and saw 4 people coming at him like arrows. Warriors at the peak of the second tribulation could react fast and move fast. One of them had been invaded by worms of the void. He was frozen on the spot, trying to contain the worms. Swish, 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 all 4 of them used ranged attacks which were weaker than close-range attacks. That being said, they were all at the peak of the second tribulation, and their ranged attacks were not to be underestimated. Gong Zizai's fish shadow had already injured Lu Li, which was evident. That being said, the fish shadow clearly contained profound meaning, or else it wouldn't be so powerful. A fish shadow, a ray of sword light, a spear shadow, and an axe shadow caught up with Lu Li almost at the same time. Lu Li had just regained his balance after he was smashed away. He could only manage to dodge. He twisted his body to dodge the fish shadow, but he was hit by the other 3 ranged attacks. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Li was smashed away again. The 3 attacks were not as powerful as the fish shadow, but they were still powerful. Lu Li spat out another mouthful of blood. Before Lu Li could come back to his senses, the 4 had caught up with him and launched another 4 ranged attacks. Lu Li complained to himself. Gong Zizai and the other 3 had learned their lesson. They stayed away from him for fear of being attacked by worms of the void. Therefore, they kept attacking him from a distance. No matter how strong Lu Li's body was, he would die if he were to be hit continuously. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 kept on attacking. Lu Li was not as fast as them, so he could not run away. He could only dodge with difficulty. Every time, before he could come back to his senses, the 4 would attack him again. The 4's attacks were ferocious. Everywhere Lu Li went, hills would be flattened and deep ravines would appear. Rivers would be diverted and forests would be flattened. Not far away, there were people passing by. Seeing the power of the attacks, they ran away in fear. I can't go on like this. After being attacked for an hour, Lu Li's internal organs were seriously injured. His body had strong healing abilities, and he was healing himself all the time. Lu Li himself took some healing pellets, but his injuries were getting worse. When his injuries reached a certain point, his defense and speed would be greatly reduced. That would be the end of Lu Li. Lu Li made up his mind. He began to release worms of the void from the mountain. This time it was not golden worms of the void, but regular worms of the void. The number of golden worms of the void was small, only about 100 million. However, there were hundreds of billions of regular worms of the void. Lu Li was not afraid of running out of worms of the void. He sent out more and more worms of the void, covering an area with a radius of several miles. The 4 stopped their attacks and looked at the worms of the void with fear. That warrior at the peak of the second tribulation with the dagger had not caught up with Lu Li yet. This meant that the worms of the void were tricky and could not be killed or suppressed easily. Swish, swish, Lu Li soon released tens of billions of worms of the void, covering an area with a radius of more than 3 miles. Since the 4 stopped their attacks, Lu Li could take a breather to recover from his injuries. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 soon launched their attacks, but not at Lu Li. They were trying to kill the worms of the void. Regular worms of the void were too slow to catch up with the 4. The 4 could dodge and kill the worms of the void. What happened next shocked Lu Li. The other 3's attacks were ineffective against the worms of the void. Gong Zizai took out a mirror and shot out rays of white light that burned the worms of the void to death. He was not fast, but he had the ability to kill the worms of the void. Nice! The 4 were overjoyed as well. The worms of the void could not catch up with them. As long as they could kill the worms of the void, Lu Li would be at his wit's end. Fight back! A glint of determination rose in Lu Li's eyes. He must fight back as soon as possible and kill 1 or 2 of them. Otherwise, he would suffer a crushing defeat. Chapter 1874. Lu Li ran like crazy. The worms of the void did not go after Gong Zizai and the other three. Instead, they had been following him and protecting him. In this way, Gong Zizai and the other three would not dare to get close to him. Lu Li sped up to the extreme and went back the way he came. Gong Zizai and the other three were hot on his trail. The mirror in Gong Zizai's hand kept shooting out white light. Every time, there would be a line of light that could kill at least tens of thousands of worms of the void. The speed was neither fast nor slow. That being said, there were only so many worms of the void. At this rate, in a day or two, Lu Li's hundreds of billions of worms of the void would be wiped out. The others were still trying to kill the worms of the void. However, the worms of the void were in a state between tangible and intangible. At the moment, the worms of the void were intangible. Their attacks could not inflict any harm on the worms of the void. An hour later, Lu Li arrived at the battlefield. That warrior was sitting on the ground, suppressing the worms of the void. Lu Li checked with psychic power and checked the worms of the void. This warrior did have some skills. The worms of the void that entered his body were suppressed and could not move. Whoosh, Lu Li rushed over as fast as lightning. Gong Zizai shouted at once, "Old Gu, move." The warrior who was sitting with his legs crossed opened his eyes. Seeing Lu Li rushing towards him, a dagger appeared in his hand. Ruthlessness appeared in his eyes as he dashed towards Lu Li. "Worms of the void, nah." Lu Li gave the mother worm an order. The golden worm of the void moved at once. Gu, who was flying up, stopped. There was a trace of pain on his face. Whoosh! Lu Li's body flew over like a stream of light as he punched Old Gu's head forcefully. The violent force surged and sent Old Gu flying. Although his head wasn't broken, it was still concussed. "Help!" Gong Zizai shouted. They could all tell that Old Gu was badly injured. If Lu Li kept on attacking, Old Gu would be killed. The warriors launched long-range attacks at once. They were not aiming to hurt Lu Li, only to interfere with his attacks. 4 streaks of Xian energy came. However, they didn't dare to go into the range of the worms of the void. Therefore, they kept some distance from Lu Li. When the 4 of them attacked, Lu Li dodged at once. He barely dodged their attacks. Then, he dashed over and got close to Old Gu. Boom, boom, boom. This time, Lu Li grabbed Patriarch Gu's arm with one hand while he punched Patriarch Gu's face with the other hand in a frenzy. In the time for one breath, he had punched Patriarch Gu more than a dozen times. Old Gu had lost his mind as well. His arm was tightly held by Lu Li, and he could not get rid of it. He had to desperately swing his other hand and stab at Lu Li's chest. He was fast as well. In the time for 1 or 2 breaths, he had stabbed Lu Li more than a dozen times with his dagger. Lu Li's chest was badly mutilated, but Lu Li's body was strong. The dagger only managed to pierce into his skin and only 1 or 2 inches. The broken blade could not pierce through the heart and lungs, let alone break the bones. Chi, 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 Chi. Gong Zizai and the others were all attacking fiercely. This time, Lu Li could not dodge. He was hit by 4 attacks. Blood spilled out of his mouth. One of his hands was still holding on to Old Gu, and the other hand was punching again and again. His gaze was as determined as steel. Although there was no malevolence on his face, Old Gu's heart was filled with despair. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Li kept on punching like crazy. After more than 50 punches, Old Gu's head was finally broken. Lu Li punched in and killed Old Gu. Even though he had killed a warrior at the peak of the second tribulation, Lu Li was not feeling good himself. His chest was stabbed for dozens of times, and there were holes everywhere. His back was badly mutilated by the attacks from the 4 men. His mouth was full of blood, and Old Gu's brains were splattered on his face. Phew, phew. Lu Li put away the Spirit Heaven treasure dagger and turned around to look at Gong Zizai and the others. He was breathing heavily, and his eyes were like that of a wolf. Gong Zizai and the others were alarmed. It was mainly because Lu Li's appearance was so frightening. His ferocious attack just now had frightened them. Swish! Lu Li didn't bother to tend to his wounds. He dashed toward the others. He wanted to get close to them and kill one more when they were frightened. Unfortunately, Gong Zizai and the others were wily old foxes who had been around for many years. They were not foppish young masters with no practical experience. They had climbed out from the pile of corpses. Lu Li's ferocious attack was frightening. That being said, they came to their senses soon and scattered. They were faster than Lu Li. It was impossible for Lu Li to get close. They had seen through Lu Li's tactics, and they knew how Lu Li killed old Zhao. Lu Li could only kill the warrior at the peak of the second tribulation with the help of the worms of the void and close combat. As long as they could not let Lu Li get close, Lu Li would not have any chance to kill them. The group of wily old foxes looked at each other, and the corners of their mouths curled into cruel smiles. They had all the time in the world. They could spend 10 days or half a month to kill Lu Li slowly. Lu Li's physical defense was strong, but wasn't he badly wounded? The four of them spread out and began to blast at Lu Li. They were all outside the coverage of the worms of the void. In this case, they might not be able to hit Lu Li. That being said, Lu Li could dodge one of them, but not four. Gong Zizai kept killing the worms of the void with his mirror. The number of worms of the void was decreasing, and so was the coverage. When all the worms of the void were killed, what else could Lu Li do? Alas, Lu Li dashed to the left and right several times, but the four of them retreated at once. Realizing that he could not get close, Lu Li gave up. He swallowed 2 healing pills and dodged to the left and right, dodging the streams of light that kept bombarding him. He thought about it, trying to figure out a way. The worms of the void were being consumed fast. He could only dodge 2 or 3 attacks from the 4 of them at the same time. One of them was bound to land on him. If he could not figure out a way, he would die sooner or later. I have to think of a way to attack, to defend, or to increase my speed. After a while, Lu Li figured it out. Gong Zizai and the other 3 were too smart. It would be hard for him to get close to Lu Li if he attacked. It would be difficult to increase his speed as well, unless he could learn a high-level speed fundamental meaning right away, which was almost impossible. Then, there was only one way left to improve his defense. As long as he could do that, the 4 would not be able to hurt him. I have to find a way to mobilize energy from my acupoints to increase my defense. Lu Li forced himself to calm down. While he was dodging, he focused on his body. He didn't even mind Gong Zizai and the other 3. He was trying to mobilize energy from his acupoints. And what is he doing? Gong Zizai and the others noticed that Lu Li's eyes were blurred and his reaction was slowed down. Almost 3 of the 4's attacks could land on Lu Li. If this went on, Lu Li would probably be killed in half a day at most. Faster. Chapter 1875. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 of them had been attacking Lu Li for more than 4 hours. More than 10 billion worms of the void had been killed. Lu Li was covered in wounds. Even a piece of iron that was over 1 million years old would have a mark when being attacked by several warriors at the peak of the second tribulation. At the moment, Lu Li was hiding in a valley that had turned into an abyss. The worms of the void were in the abyss, while Lu Li was lying in the abyss by himself. Gong Zizai and the other 3 warriors were floating in the air and attacking Lu Li constantly. Since Lu Li didn't dodge, it was easier for them to attack. Gong Zizai didn't even want to go on killing the worms of the void because Lu Li seemed to be in a miserable state. He seemed to be seriously injured and could die at any moment. They were amazed by Lu Li's physical strength. If it were anyone else, even a warrior at the peak of the second tribulation would have died under their continuous attacks. Lu Li was lying on the ground. The skin on his back was rotten. His bones could be seen in many places. His injuries were serious, but his eyes were closed and he was motionless. He seemed to have passed out. What Gong Zizai and Lu Li didn't know was that, 30,000 miles away, Patriarch Chun was waiting. Patriarch Chun mobilized the most powerful scout of the Cloud Mountain to keep an eye on Lu Li's situation. Whoosh! That scout had just arrived. He was invisible. When he walked, there was no sound of wind or ripple in space. He suddenly appeared next to Patriarch Chun, showing an average-looking face. He cupped his fists and said, "Patriarch Chun, Lu Li's injuries are serious. He is on the verge of death." "Oh, Patriarch Chun, who was sitting with his legs crossed, suddenly opened his eyes. He thought about it and said, "Let's go over there and take a look." Patriarch Chun gave out a white glare. He was invisible as well. He sneaked toward Lu Li with the scout. Neither of them dared to stay close. Gong Zizai and the others were at the peak of the second tribulation. They would be discovered easily. Go and check out the surroundings. See if there are people hiding nearby to watch the battle. Thousands of miles away from Lu Li, Patriarch Chun waved his hand. The scout left in a gust of wind. Patriarch Chun sat with his legs crossed again. He didn't use psychic power. He just sat quietly. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, the scout came back and reported, "There is no one nearby." "Patriarch Chun, are you going to do something?" "No hurry." Patriarch Chun waved his hand and said, "I just sensed it. Lu Li's breath of life is still strong. I don't think he will die so soon." "But," the scout said with confusion, "I sense that Lu Li is lying on the ground motionlessly, letting Gong Zizai and the other 3 attack him. The injury on his back is very serious. If he's not heavily injured, why didn't he dodge? I don't know." Elder Chin shook his head and said, "I won't make a move until the very last moment. Once I make a move and kill Gong Zizai's group of 4, it might bring a lot of trouble to Fairy." "All right." Since Elder Chan had made his decision, the scout naturally wouldn't say anything else. He frowned. If Lu Li was so vigorous, why didn't he run away? Why was he lying there and letting Gong Zizai and the other 3 attack him? Was he trying to lure Gong Zizai and the others into close combat? As a matter of fact, Gong Zizai and the others did have the same idea. There were several times when the 4 of them wanted to rush down and kill Lu Li. If the 4 of them could get close to Lu Li and release several moves at the same time, Lu Li would be dead. But for many times, the 4 of them resisted the urge. They also suspected that this was a trick and that Lu Li was trying to trick them to get closer. They were a bunch of wily old foxes who had walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They had patience. They resisted the urge to attack. After all, in a couple of hours at most, Lu Li would be killed. This was not a trick. Lu Li wasn't trying to lure the 4 to attack him. He was concentrating on how to mobilize the energy in his acupoints to increase his defense. After a few hours, he had some confidence in his heart. He tried to mobilize the energy, and he succeeded. Every time he punched, he could mobilize the energy. He controlled the divine energy to run around in his body and mimicked punching. In this way, he could mobilize the energy in his acupoints. But when the energy was mobilized, he didn't know how to increase his defense. The energy was running around in his body, but it didn't increase his defense at all. At every moment, there were attacks crashing down on him. His injuries were constantly increasing, and he could already smell the scent of the Grim Reaper. Time moved on. 2 hours later, Lu Li's breath of life began to weaken. He was seriously injured and bleeding. It would be strange if his breath of life could not be weakened. At this moment, Patriarch Chen opened his eyes. Lu Li hadn't moved, and his breath of life was so weak. Patriarch Chen was at his wit's end. Patriarch Chen had to do something, or Lu Li would die soon. "Go and check again. I will do it when I'm sure there is no one nearby." Patriarch Chen waved his hand, and the scouts sneaked away. Even if Patriarch Chen were to take action, he didn't want others to know. He wanted to kill the 4 quietly, so that the information wouldn't be leaked and Fairy Tianyun wouldn't be in trouble. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, the scout came back and reported, "Patriarch Chen, I am sure there is no one around. You can do it now. After you do it, I will check around. If someone sees you, I will let you know." "No need," Patriarch Chen smiled. He shook his head and said, "I don't have to do it. Lu Li, this punk can always surprise us." "Eh." The scout blinked in confusion. Patriarch Chen thought about it and said, "Go and check on your own. I don't know the specifics. Anyways, this punk is not going to die." "Okay." Lu Li flew out and turned invisible. He sneaked toward Lu Li carefully. He stopped when he was 3 miles away from Lu Li and used a special skill to sense what was going on. "What?" Soon, the scout was taken aback. Lu Li was no longer lying on his stomach. He was lying on his back, and he still looked satisfied. The attacks from the four of them landed on him, but they couldn't inflict any damage on him. On the contrary, his wounds were recovering quickly. How is this possible? The scout was confused. Lu Li was clearly about to die. How come he was able to withstand the attacks by turning over? Could it be that the attacks from Gong Zizai and the other three were fake? They were all illusions, so they could not hurt Lu Li? What was going on? Gong Zizai and the other three noticed something was wrong as well. Their attacks were as powerful as before, but they didn't inflict any harm on Lu Li. They could tell with psychic power that Lu Li's wounds were recovering fast. River. Chapter 1876. How is that possible? What is going on? How can this be? After the time for one incense stick to burn, Gong Zizai and the others thought they had seen ghosts. Lu Li was about to be killed, but now he was recovering. Was he a cockroach that could not be killed? When the hole in Lu Li's chest was about to close up, they could not sit still anymore. They would have wasted their time. They had been attacking for such a long time, and they were about to succeed. How could they let Lu Li slip away? Go down and attack. Gong Zizai made up his mind. While Lu Li was still recovering, Gong Zizai wanted to take a gamble and kill Lu Li once and for all. Lu Li's eyes were still closed. It was the best time to kill him. Gong Zizai could tell that the worms of void were not as fast as the golden ones, and they were not as powerful. If the four of them went down and attacked with full force, they might be able to kill Lu Li directly. Gong Zizai sent a message to the others. The four of them looked at each other and made up their minds. Just now, Lu Li almost died. It was hard for them to accept that he had come back to life. They were right above Lu Li, and they could reach him in the time for one breath. How could the four of them not kill Lu Li? Charge! The four of them shouted at the same time and dashed down as fast as lightning. In the distance, Patriarch Shun and the scout were taken aback. Lu Li could not be killed instantly. Patriarch Shun could not save him even if he wanted to. Buzzing at that moment, Lu Li opened his eyes and put on a mocking grin. He didn't move. The mountain in his hand glowed as tens of millions of worms of void whooshed out and enveloped the four of them. The four of them had reached Lu Li. They were shocked to see the golden worms of void. However, there was no way to dodge. The four of them made up their minds and swung their weapons at Lu Li. Each of them had a saber, one a spear, one a huge axe, and Gong Zizai was wearing a black glove. Gong Zizai was the most ferocious of the four. Therefore, he aimed at Lu Li's head while the other three aimed at Lu Li's neck and the other two at his chest. All four of them used their strongest moves, trying to kill Lu Li once and for all. Bang, 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 bang. For muffled noises were heard. What happened next shocked Gong Zizai and the others. The four of them had used their most powerful moves. However, apart from Lu Li's head being cracked and one of them cutting open Lu Li's chest, none of them were able to do anything. The attacks of the other two couldn't deal much damage to Lu Li. Even the two of them couldn't deal any fatal damage to Lu Li. Lu Li had learned to gather energy to increase his defense, which greatly increased his defense. Void Worm, Chew! Lu Li yelled. He grabbed Gong Zizai's hand in a flash, and at the same time, punched at Gong Zizai's head with his other fist. The tens of millions of void worms that had entered their bodies started to gnaw away at them, and the four of them immediately found it hard to endure the pain. Two of them instinctively retreated. Die, let's die together. Gong Zizai's hand was caught by Lu Li. He couldn't get rid of it, as if it were clamped by an iron clamp. Gong Zizai clenched his teeth and swung his fist at Lu Li's head. Since he could hurt Lu Li just now, he could kill Lu Li now. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Li punched at Gong Zizai's head again and again. Gong Zizai's fist landed on Lu Li's head as well. The two of them were like madmen, attacking each other's heads with all their strength. Go to hell. The other warrior who didn't run lost his mind as well. He swung his axe and hacked at Lu Li's back. He didn't believe that Lu Li's body was really made of cold iron. It was impossible that Gong Zizai couldn't crack Lu Li's head. Lu Li's body was not made of cold iron, but it was stronger. Gong Zizai had just cracked Lu Li's head. Gong Zizai had punched Lu Li's head for more than a dozen times, but still couldn't crack Lu Li's head. As for the other warrior, apart from leaving a mark on Lu Li's back, he couldn't even break Lu Li's bones. Poof! On the other hand, Gong Zizai was in a miserable state. Lu Li's punches were too strong. Additionally, the worms of the void were biting at Gong Zizai. Gong Zizai was in great pain and could not concentrate on defense. After more than a dozen punches, Gong Zizai's head was badly injured. His soul was shaken as well. Lu Li was hitting his face. Gong Zizai's vision was blurred. He seemed to smell death. Apart from swinging his fists, there was nothing he could do. Boom! Finally, Gong Zizai's head was cracked. For Lu Li, a cracked head was the same as death. Lu Li punched again, and this time, his fist went into Gong Zizai's head. The old warrior with the axe came back to his senses. He wanted to run away at once, but Lu Li's mountain swarmed out another swarm of worms of the void and entered his body. The pain was unbearable. He could no longer run away. Whoosh! Lu Li used the same trick. He grabbed the warrior's hand with one hand and punched with the other. That warrior cried out in pain. His defense was weaker than Gong Zizai's. One punch had injured him, and his soul was shaken. Hiss, hiss. Zhang He and the other warrior flew up. Seeing Gong Zizai's tragic death and that the other warrior was not going to make it, they felt a chill down their spines. Lu Li's madness, Lu Li's ruthlessness, Lu Li's strong body, and Lu Li's violent attacks. Lu Li and Zhang He felt fear from the depth of their souls. They still had worms of the void inside them. They could suppress the worms of the void, but for a moment, they didn't know whether to move forward or retreat. If they moved forward, they might not be able to kill Lu Li. Instead, they might lose their lives. If they retreated, they would have failed completely. Where should they go? Should they go back to the Black Mountain and live their lives with their tails between their legs? Boom, boom, boom. Lu Li was attacking wildly from below. He punched again and again. That warrior could not fight back. After more than a dozen punches, his head was badly injured. He was even less able to fight back. Boom! Finally, his head was smashed. Zhang He and the other warrior looked at each other. Without any hesitation, they flew toward the Black Mountain. Phew, phew. Lu Li sat on the ground after he killed that warrior. He wiped the blood off his face and took some healing pellets. He didn't go after the other two warriors. He was not fast enough to catch up with them. He was satisfied that he could kill Gong Zizai and the others. Nice one. Patriarch Chen put on a smile. He had been watching the fight. Lu Li's offensive power was not strong enough for him, but his defensive power had been improved again. You have achieved initial success in the immortal body. Patriarch Chen nodded. Lu Li could have such strong defensive abilities with his body because he knew how to use the primordial qi to enhance his body. It meant that Lu Li had figured out some of the principles of the immortal body. Given time, he might really become the second Emperor Z. Whoosh! On this thought, Patriarch Chen showed himself. He rushed to Lu Li and said with a smile, Lu Li, good. You are growing fast. Fairy Lu and I are happy. You are badly wounded. I will take you back to the Cloud Mountain to heal. Since there was a chance for Lu Li to become the second Emperor Z, Patriarch Chen had to build a good relationship with him. In the future, when Lu Li's immortal body was completed, he would be a powerful warrior that could defeat the second or third realm. How could Patriarch Chen let go of such a great opportunity? Chapter 1877. At the top of the cloud peak, Lu Li had been back for 2 days. His wounds had been healed. His physical healing ability was so strong that he could recover quickly without taking any pellets. He was not in a hurry to stop cultivation. Instead, he had been sitting with his legs crossed. At the same time, he was reviewing the recent battles in his mind and summarizing his experience. Also, he was studying the way the energy was circulating in his acupoints. He was trying to use the energy to attack and defend more conveniently. The 720 acupoints were like 720 small worlds that could store endless energy. At first, he stored the liquid of dragons from the Pond of Dragons. Later, he stored the energy of thunderbolts. Not long ago, he consumed some of the primordial energy and stored it in his acupoints as well. All the energy was integrated and turned into a new kind of energy. This energy could be used to attack and enhance his abilities. At the same time, it could be used for defense, which could increase his defense by 10 times. Luli was not satisfied with the current situation. He thought the way he used the energy was too primitive. If he could use the energy in a more ingenious way, he might be able to increase his abilities. If his defense could be improved, he might be able to stand the attack of a 3 Tribulation Heaven god. There was still half of the primordial energy left in his body. Luli was not in a hurry. Now that Gong Zizai and the others were killed, nobody would come after him for the time being. He was attacked at the Thunder Mountain, and Fairy Tianyun would come after the Black Mountain as well. Next time he went to the Thunder Mountain to cultivate, he would be safer. Therefore, he cultivated in the castle in peace to stabilize his abilities. He was ready to rest for some time. The pressure he had been under had worn him out both physically and mentally. After cultivating for 3 days, Luli had a good sleep. He slept for 3 days and 3 nights in one go. He took a bath after he woke up. Then, he asked a maid to prepare a banquet and drank by himself. Uncle Li was in the mountain. However, Fairy Tianyun forbade Luli to bring Uncle Li to the top of the cloud peak. Therefore, Luli didn't teleport Uncle Li out to drink with him. Rustle, rustle, rustle. After a while, he heard some footsteps. Luli checked with psychic power and saw a slim figure. He smiled. It just so happened that he was bored drinking alone. Someone had come. Luli, you're having a good time by yourself. A lady in a white dress came in. Her face was covered with a veil. She was graceful and graceful. She had an otherworldly air about her. It was Lady E who went to the primordial realm with Luli. Miss E, you came at the right time. Drink a few cups with me. Luli stood up and greeted warmly. Lady E's eyes were full of smiles. She didn't hold back and sat down. She even picked up a cup of wine and said, "Come, I wish young Master Lu a small success in his divine body and a great victory." Luli didn't pick up the goblet. Instead, he pointed to the veil on Lady E's face and teased. "Lady E, how can you drink with a veil on?" Puffed. Miss E smiled and wiped her face with her hand, revealing a beautiful face. She had put on some light makeup today and looked especially elegant. Her face was slightly flushed. She picked up the wine again and said, "Is this okay?" Thank you, Miss E." Luli clinked his goblet with hers and drained it. He was in a good mood. Ever since he came to the second heaven, he had been under a lot of pressure. During this time, his abilities had improved by leaps and bounds, which relieved some of the pressure on his shoulders. "How do you know about me, Lady?" Luli looked at Lady E with curiosity and asked, "I don't think there's anything you don't know about the Cloud Mountain. If I may ask, who are you? Didn't you live at the 18 main peaks? How come you can come and go at will at the Cloud Mountain?" Take a guess? Lady E had a cunning look in her eyes. She looked like a temptress. She picked up a jug, filled up Luli's goblet, and said, "How about this? If you get it right, I will drink a jug, and if you get it wrong, I will drink a goblet." Okay. Drinking a few goblets was nothing for Luli. He thought about it and said, "Wait, what if I get it right and you don't want to admit it?" "No." Lady E patted her chest and said, "I swear on my integrity that I will not lie." Okay. Luli took a few bites and asked, "Are you the granddaughter of Patriarch Chen?" Lady E shook her head. Luli picked up his goblet and drank without hesitation. Then he asked again, "Are you the granddaughter of a patriarch?" "Your answer is a bit shameless." Missy smiled and said, "But you guessed wrong. Continue drinking." Luli was straightforward. He drank another goblet. After a while, he asked, "Are you the apprentice of Fairy Tianyun?" When Luli went to the primordial realm, Lady E went with him. Fairy Tianyun was trying to train Lady E into a powerful warrior. It was very likely that Lady E was her apprentice. However, Lady E still shook her head. Luli frowned and said, "Then are you the one fairy by Yin chose to kill Yin Kaiwa?" "No." "Then are you the daughter of Fairy Tianyun?" "Not at all." "Are you her relative? Granddaughter?" Niece? Niece? Granddaughter? No. You have answered this question 5 times. You need to drink 5 goblets. Lady Yi's words confused Lu Li. He didn't know who Lady Yi was or what she was. Lu Li picked up a jar of wine and said, "How about this, Lady Yi? Tell me who you are, and I will drink this." "I cannot tell you." Lady Yi shook her head and said after a pause, "You will know in the future. By then, you will be surprised." "Ha ha." Lu Li was even more confused. What kind of identity could surprise him? Was she someone he knew, or was she related to someone he knew? But he didn't know anyone at the second heaven. Since Lady Yi didn't want to tell him, Lu Li didn't ask further. He asked another question. "What have you been doing recently? I haven't seen you for a long time. You have been out all the time. How can you see me?" Lady Yi rolled her eyes. She was naturally seductive and soft. Lu Li had drunk quite a bit. He was surprised to see this. He chuckled and said, "You really are a vixen of all kinds. One moment, you are a fairy, the next moment, you are a little witch. Sometimes you are a vixen. Thank you for the compliment." Miss Yi's eyes curved into crescent moons as she said, "Life is full of changes. Isn't this also a kind of cultivation?" Cultivation? Lu Li was in deep thoughts. After the time for one incense stick to burn, he said, "Life is indeed like a kind of cultivation. The road of life is long and long. We will experience many things, meet many people, go to many places, and have many stories. Everyone has a different starting point, and so will their destination. Well, it doesn't matter where the destination is as long as the journey is exciting enough." I didn't expect you to have such a profound conception at such a young age. Chapter 1878. Lady Yi was gone. Her fragrance lingered in the hall. Lu Li did not lose himself in the fragrance. Instead, he was absorbed in Lady Yi's words. Lady Yi's words didn't seem to come from her. It was more like Fairy Tian Yin asked her to pass on the message. Otherwise, how could a little girl say something so profound and meaningful? Accumulation on the road? More haste, less speed? Lu Li repeated these 2 sentences for a long time. Was it a warning to him? He was growing too fast, that he must stabilize his mind and build a solid foundation, and that he should not be in a hurry to improve his abilities? Lu Li realized he was getting carried away. He sat quietly in the castle for 3 to 5 days to calm himself down. He didn't go to see Fairy Tianyin in a hurry to ask how things were going at the Jile Mountain. Instead, he cultivated quietly in his room. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and Fairy Tianyin had yet to summon him. But today, Patriarch Chun came to deliver a message to Fairy Tianyin. "Lu Li," Patriarch Chun said with a smile. Heishan came back in advance. He killed the commander and warriors of the Jile Mountain. He promised that this will not happen again. Also, those who came after you have been driven out of the palace of Heishan. If you want to cultivate, you can go to the Jile Mountain at any time. Heishan is so cowardly? Lu Li knew something about Heishan. He was surprised. Theoretically speaking, Heishan should not be afraid of Fairy Tianyin. If she questioned him, he would just deal with it. He could just say that he knew how to handle it. But after killing the commander and the commander of the Jile Mountain, he was going to drive out all those who came after him. Was he bowing down to Fairy Tianyin? Ha. Patriarch Chin's attitude toward Lu Li had taken a 180-degree turn. Pointing to the sky with a smile, Patriarch Chun said, "Fairy Maiden has gone to the devil. The devil has spoken in person. How can the Black Mountain not be afraid?" No wonder. Lu Li finally understood. He was completely relieved. Since the great Demon King had spoken, he would be absolutely safe in Jile Mountain in the future. Once he arrived at Jile Mountain, Heishan would probably send more people to guard the place in case something like this happened again. At that time, the great Demon King would definitely be dissatisfied. "Thank the fairy for me when you get back." Lu Li cupped his fists, stood up, and said, "Then I will go to the Jile Mountain to cultivate. I haven't consumed all the primordial chaos yet." "All right." Elder Chen nodded and said, "I'll send you over." I'll negotiate with the people from Black Mountain. You'll be safer there. Thank you, Elder Chun. Lu expressed his gratitude. They walked down the Heaven Cloud's peak. When Lu saw the Tower of Demon Banishment, he was intrigued. He sent a message, right? You said that I can go in and out of the Tower of Demon Banishment at will? Elder Chun, do you think you can bring me into the Yao Ceiling Tower? I will release some worms and let them devour and evolve on their own. Lu wanted the worms of the void to divide more, so that the golden worms of the void could evolve more. No problem. Fairy Tianyin had told Patriarch Chun about these matters. Now that Lu had said so, Patriarch Chun showed him to the Tower of Demon, subduing at once. Patriarch Chun said to the leader of the Tower of Demon subduing, "Open the door to the second floor." The second floor? Lu frowned. Would it be dangerous to go to the second floor? Granted, his defensive abilities had been greatly improved. However, the demons had too many strange abilities. He had to be on guard. Lu, don't worry. I will go with you. Patriarch Chin's message calmed Lu down. The leader activated the mechanism of the Tower of Demon Banishment. A dark door appeared on the second floor. Patriarch Chun said to the leader, "Later, I will crush the Jade Talisman. Teleport us out at once." Yes, Patriarch Chun was the #1 patriarch. His words were equivalent to Fairy Tianyun's orders. Nobody dared to question him. Patriarch Chun took Lu with him and dashed into the door of the second floor directly. What? Hundreds of people gathered outside the Tower of Demon Banishment. They were gambling around the old dragon. They were in an uproar upon seeing this. It was not strange for Lu to go to the second floor of the Tower of Demon Banishment. But Patriarch Chun was going with him, and he was going to ask the leader to teleport them out later? Was this equal to letting Lu have fun? The #1 patriarch of the Mountain of Cloud would go to the second floor of the Tower of Demon Banishment with him in person. He could go in and out at any time. This kind of treatment would make others envious. That being said, Lu had moved to the peak of the Cloud Peak. For him, going to the Tower of Demon Banishment was just a trial. The purpose of going to the Tower of Demon Banishment was to get a better ID token so that he could live and cultivate in a more advanced place. Many people were envious, but nobody dared to hate Lu, let alone have the intention to kill him. Many people of the Mountain of Cloud were not convinced when the 6,000 or 7,000 warriors were driven out. They hated Lu secretly and were looking for a chance to kill him. When what happened to Gong Zizai and the others came to the Mountain of Cloud, those who hated Lu shut their mouths and dared not to hate him. Lu had killed several warriors at the peak of the Second Tribulation and more than 1,000 Second Tribulation Heaven Immortals as a First Tribulation warrior. Lu's glorious achievement had slapped many people who were jealous of him in the face. They dared not to hate him or have the intention to kill him. This was the reality of the world. When you were powerless and yet you were treated well, with good treasures and resources, many people would feel unfair. They would be jealous and have the intention to kill you. But when you have absolute power, the hatred and jealousy in these people's hearts will disappear. They would be terrified, they would be convinced, and they would think that you deserved it. Some of them would even take a 180-degree turn in their attitudes and start to fawn over you. What was more, the Black Mountain admitted defeat and killed the leader of the guards and drove out those who were going after Lu. This made people feel that Lu was unfathomable. Or did Lu have a powerful background? Otherwise, the Asmodean Lord would not have spoken. With this speculation in mind, people were envious of Lu. They could not hate him. They didn't even dare to speak ill of Lu in a group, for fear that Lu would bear a grudge or Fairy Tianyun would be angered. Back in the days, we used to bet on when Lu would die. Someone muttered. The people nearby heard it, and their faces immediately turned red. Back then, nobody had faith in Lu. Not only did they think he could not pass the Tower of Demon Imprisonment, but they didn't think he could survive another day. How long had it been? Lu could already kill warriors at the peak of the Second Tribulation realm. Many people here were Second Tribulation Heaven Immortals. The dragon was the only one at the peak of the Second Tribulation. More importantly, They had lived for a long time. Their abilities were growing too slowly. That was why they felt bored and decided to gamble with divine origin gold. Luli was so young, but he was more powerful than them. Many of them thought they had been living in beasts of primordial chaos all these years. Actually, the dragon raised his eyebrows. What he said stunned everyone. When this punk went to the Tower of Demon Imprisonment, he was not strong. At best, he was comparable to an average second tribulation heaven immortal. It was thanks to those bugs that he passed the first level of the Tower of Demon Imprisonment. I think his abilities must have improved recently to be able to kill Patriarch Gong and Patriarch Zhao. Hiss, hiss, the warriors were speechless. Sometimes they could cultivate for hundreds or thousands of years, and they could only improve a little. What Luli had cultivated for a year, they would have to spend tens of thousands of years, or even their entire lives. All of a sudden, I want to be the banker. The dragon smiled and said, I bet that in 10 years, this punk's comprehensive abilities can reach the level of a 3-tribulation heaven immortal. But if you don't believe me, Chapter 1879. The second level of the Tower of Demon Subduing was similar to the first level. The only difference was that there were forests on both sides of the path instead of weeds. After Lu Li and Patriarch Chun came in, Lu Li used psychic power to check the forest. Just like before, he could find nothing. Lu Li asked, Patriarch Chun, what are the demons here like? The demons here are called dream beasts. Patriarch Chun explained, the demons here mainly use soul attacks. Of course, their soul attacks are different from regular ones. They can create strange dreams that you will never be able to walk out of. Even if you have enchanted souls to protect your soul, it will be useless. If you cannot walk out of the dreams, you will be torn apart by them. Oh, let me try. Luli was interested. He cupped his fists and said, if something goes wrong or I cannot wake up for a long time, please help me, Patriarch Chen. I need to go to the Jile Mountain to cultivate. Sure. Patriarch Chen nodded. Luli strode forward. He had absolute confidence in his defense. The dream beast should not be able to break his defense. He just didn't want to stay in the dreams for too long. He walked on for more than 300 feet. The forests on both sides of the path began to tremble. A gentle breeze blew over, bringing with it a faint fragrance. Luli scanned with his divine perception and found a strange demon floating over. It didn't seem to have a physical body and was constantly changing its appearance with the wind. From time to time, it would turn into a flirtatious woman, a strange demonic beast, or a strange plant. Luli suddenly felt the world in front of him had changed. Patriarch Chun had disappeared. He was no longer in the path. The forests on both sides had disappeared. He could only see strange faces appearing in midair, and they were all women's faces. Some of them were pure, some were flirtatious, some were cold, some were flirtatious, some were singing softly, some were self-pitying. One after another, faces appeared and changed. Lady Yi's face appeared, followed by the goddess of Shanqing Palace, Lady Man's face, Ling Qingyin's face, Pan Yuqin's face, Qi Shi Er's face, Jiang Qiling by Qiu Xue, by Xia Shuang, Lu Ling, and Prajna. All the faces behind were those of women he was familiar with. Some were in pain, some were sad, and some were in tears. Luli didn't know what to feel. Luli knew very well that these were all illusions. He should be in his own dream. These women were all related to him, or women that he missed. Although he knew it was a dream, he still felt extremely uncomfortable. He didn't know how to break out of this dream, so he could only stand there and watch the scenes around him change. A moment later, all the faces disappeared. The scenery began to change. It was the northern desert of the Heaven Reverse universe. Two identical girls appeared in front of him. They were Autumn Snow and Bai Shuang. The two of them stood far away and smiled at him. Bai Shuang kept beckoning him over. Even though he knew it was a dream, Luli could not help but want to go over and hold the twins in his arms. At this moment, even if he knew it was a dream, he didn't even want to wake up. He wanted to stay in there forever because he would be able to see the woman he loved the most. Darling, I miss you so much. Jiang Qiling appeared in front of him. She looked at him affectionately. Before he could do anything, Jiang Qiling disappeared in the wind. Then, a beautiful girl with waist-length hair and a cyan robe showed up. She had an exquisite face. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Brother Lu, you lied to me. You said that when Prajna went to the divinity, you would marry me. Now, I have become an immortal, and I am in the divinity. Where are you? You have broken Prajna's heart." "Prajna, it's me," Lu Li couldn't help but say. Before he could finish his sentence, the scene changed again. Qi Shi'er appeared in front of him. She looked at Lu Li with tears in her eyes and said, "Brother, where are you? Don't you want me anymore? Come back. Without you, I will die." Shia. Lu Li's heart ached. He closed his eyes in pain, afraid to look into Qi Shi'er's pearl-like eyes. The next second, he heard a familiar voice. He opened his eyes involuntarily and said, "Sweetheart, don't worry. I have taken care of the Lu family. You can explore the second heaven with peace of mind. Qin Yin will take care of them for you. Yu Qin and I will wait for you at the land of Yu Yin." Lu Li opened his eyes. As expected, he saw Ling Qin Yin and Pan Yu Qin. He sighed to himself. It seemed that he would never wake up from this dream. Deep down in his heart, he had too many things to worry about. They would become nightmares that would trap him forever. Phew, all of a sudden, the wind came up. The world in front of him was covered in ice and snow. Faintly, a small tribe emerged. Outside the tribe, several figures were becoming clearer. Lu Li saw a girl standing outside the tribe. She was weak, wearing a white cloak and holding a walking stick. Her beautiful face was filled with joy. Seeing this, Lu Li's heart trembled. This was the scene when he came back from carrying coffins for the Lu family when he was 15, and Lu Ling was waiting for him outside the Dilong tribe. Lu Li's heart melted when he saw Lu Ling's pale and pretty face. Before he knew it, tears were running down his cheeks. He knew that he could never get over this nightmare, because the nightmare in the depth of his soul was too deep. The girls that appeared just now were his demons. They could keep him in a dream for the rest of his life, never to wake up. Alas, a leisurely sigh suddenly came from the horizon, which pulled Lu Li back from his dream. Lu Li took a closer look. The world around him had changed back. He was standing on a path with woods on both sides. Patriarch Chun was standing next to him. His robe was torn in many places, and there were some blood marks on his skin. "This beast of nightmares is impressive. I was attacked, and I didn't even feel it." Lu Li was surprised. He had been in a dream. He was bleeding, but he didn't notice anything. "Lu Li," Patriarch Chen frowned and said, "I didn't know that your nightmare was so serious. You cannot go through the second heaven's tribulation in this state. Otherwise, you will be stuck in the tribulation of mind and soul for the rest of your life. You cannot go through the second heaven's tribulation without dispelling the demons in your heart." "I know." Lu Li sighed. This was his own business, and he knew it. He had risen too fast, and his realm was improving too fast. However, his foundation was not solid enough, especially his soul. He relied too much on the dragon's soul. The heaven's tribulation was a test of his all-round abilities. His comprehensive abilities might be strong, but his foundation was not solid enough. At a critical moment, such as the heaven's tribulation, his flaws would be exposed, and he would be doomed eternally. More haste, less speed. Chapter 1880. Wait a minute. Lu Li thought of something. He asked with a frown. "Patriarch Chun, aren't the beasts of void intangible? How can my worms of the void eat them? I don't think they can eat intangible bodies, can they? They are not intangible bodies." Patriarch Chun said with a smile. "Actually, the beasts of dream you saw just now are fake. As soon as they appear, they can create illusions. You didn't even see their real bodies. Wait here. I will lure out a group of beasts of dream." Patriarch Chun rushed over. In an instant, he was more than 300 feet away from Lu Li. The forest on both sides began to tremble. Lu Li used psychic power to check. He saw many balls coming out from the woods. Yes, they were balls. They had 4 limbs, but they were too short to be seen. They had ears like rabbits, but they had fangs in their mouths. When they walked, they were rolling. Their limbs were tucked into their bodies. They were rolling toward Patriarch Chun quickly. Patriarch Chin's eyes were closed. He didn't seem to know that the beasts of dream were approaching him. There were hundreds of beasts of dream on both sides. They were not moving fast. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, the hundreds of beasts of dream were close to Patriarch Chun. What surprised Lu Li was that the beasts of dream were thinner. Their bodies were like deflated balloons. Their limbs were longer and their claws were sharper. The beasts of dream were not large, about the size of tigers. Dozens of beasts of dream swarmed toward Patriarch Chun. Their eyes glowed red. They looked like dozens of hungry wolves. When Lu Li was about to warn Patriarch Chun opened his eyes. He moved his feet and kicked the beasts of dream to Lu Li. Patriarch Chun shouted, "Lu Li, you can let your insects have a try." "Okay." Lu Li nodded. He let out many worms of the void at once. Those were average worms of the void. Lu Li wanted them to evolve. He sent out hundreds of millions of worms of the void, and they flew toward the beasts of dream. The worms of the void entered the beasts of dream. Soon, Lu Li was speechless. The worms of the void could not even bite through the most vulnerable organs of the beasts of dream. The worms of void could not even bite through them. The beasts of dream were strong. Lu Li had to send out the golden worms of the void. This time, the worms of the void were able to chew. In the time for one incense stick to burn, the dream warlock was finished. Not even the bones were left. Moreover, after tens of thousands of void worms ate a dream demon beast, they would immediately split apart. The dream demon beast body contained a lot of energy, and a single dream demon beast could support tens of thousands of void worms splitting apart. "All right," Elder Chun floated over and said, "Leave these hundreds of thousands of bugs here and let them eat freely. After some time, they will probably split into many more bugs." "I don't think that's a good idea." Lu Li touched his nose embarrassedly and said, "If we leave the worms here, I am afraid that all the dream demon beasts will be eaten up. Also, warriors that enter the second floor of the Tower of Demon Imprisonment will be attacked as well. Once my insect gives the order, it will attack indiscriminately. As long as it's a living being, it will attack." "It's all right." Elder Chun waved his hand and said, "There are many dream devil beasts here, at least tens of millions. Even if the bugs eat them all, it doesn't matter. You can enter a small world at the Cloudy Mountain, and that small world is filled with dream devil beasts. As for warriors that can explore the second floor of the Tower of Demon Imprisonment, we can make some other arrangements. Anyway, we just need to mobilize a group of dream devil beasts. This is not a problem." Okay. Since Patriarch Chun had said so, Lu Li didn't waste any more time. He told the mother insect to order the hundreds of thousands of bugs outside to fly around and attack all living beings. Lu Li put away the regular void worms, leaving only the hundreds of thousands of golden ones. He believed that the next time he came here, the hundreds of thousands of void worms would split into tens of billions or even hundreds of billions. When Lu Li was done, Patriarch Chun crushed a jade talisman. The sky glowed and a portal appeared. Patriarch Chun brought Lu Li into the portal, and they appeared outside the Tower of Demon Imprisonment. "The second floor is closed for now. I will talk to you when I come back." Patriarch Chun said something to the leader guarding the Tower of Demon Trapping and then left with Lu Li. The warriors nearby were envious. The second floor of the Tower of Demon Imprisonment was closed for a while after Lu Li went in. If it were not for the fact that there were no scandals about Fairy Tianyan, people would think that Lu Li was her gigolo. Lu Li and Patriarch Chun left the Cloudy Mountain and went directly to the Jile Mountain. On their way, they ran into some warriors who saw Lu Li from afar and ran away in fear. Recently, this white-haired young man was synonymous with killing God. How many people around here had been killed by him? What if they were killed by Lu Li if they didn't run? After 3 days, Lu Li and Patriarch Chun arrived at the Jile Mountain. There was a new leader here, and the number of warriors had increased to 300. At the foot of the Jile Mountain, there was a warrior every mile or two. "Patriarch Chun, young Master Lu." The leader's eyelids twitched when he saw Lu Li and Patriarch Chun, but he greeted them with a big smile. Patriarch Chun greeted him politely. The leader's surname was Ma, and he was very respectful to Lu Li and Patriarch Chun. He repeatedly said that Lu Li could cultivate at will, and Ma promised to fulfill his duty. Not even a mosquito could sneak up to the Jile Mountain. Lu Li expressed his gratitude out of courtesy and went up with Patriarch Chun. Lu Li killed several warriors on the peak of the Jile Mountain, and their bodies were taken away. Just like before, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and lightning struck down continuously. Lu Li, Patriarch Chun, thought about it and said, "How about I stay here and guard for you for another year? I think you can consume all the primordial chaos chi in a year at most. By then, your defense will be stronger as well." Previously, Elder Chun had immediately left after guarding for a year, but this time he had taken the initiative to stay. The difference in his attitude could not be said to be small. Lu Li smiled and said, "It's okay, Patriarch Chun. There are many things at the Cloudy Mountain that you need to deal with." What was more, Gong Zizai and the others were killed. The ones left are not strong. The Black Mountain has made an example out of them. Who would dare to mess around? Also, after I consume the primordial chaos chi, I may not go back to the Cloudy Mountain right away. I may need to refine my body for a while with the help of thunderbolts. I don't want to bother you. More haste, less speed. Lu Li planned to cultivate here for a few years to build a solid foundation and make his mind more stable. Only in this way could he have a chance to go further. Okay. Patriarch Chun handed over a jade talisman and said, "Crush the jade talisman, and I will come over as soon as possible. You can't ask Fairy Maiden for help. It will be more convenient for you to ask me." Patriarch Chun left. Lu Li let Uncle Li out. Seeing that they were back at the Jile Mountain, Uncle Li asked in surprise, "Master, how come we are back at the Jile Mountain? I have killed all the ones that needed to be killed, and everything is taken care of. Of course, I am back to cultivate. Thought you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.